In 1981, Steven Spielberg brought us a cinematic epic that, while inspired by tales of the past, redefined action heroes for a new, modern generation. Outrunning boulders and death at every turn, armed with a bullwhip, sidearm, and his wits, and he's done so much for us. It's time to give back by talking over his bodywork and a little something we like to call Indiana August on the Main Street Cinema, the show where we discuss the finer points of filmmaking. How are you, BlueDragonFive?
I'm okay.
All right, so we have gone on this journey together. Sandy Claus and Jacob have kind of, they've kind of retired. They're like Marcus Brody. They're just kind of hanging out at the museum. But us, we're going one step further, my friend. We're diving not just into Raiders of the Lost Ark, not just into an official Steven Spielberg movie, and not just into a fan remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark that took 3 decades to complete, but a documentary about said fan remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark that took, 3 or 4 decades? It's like almost verging on 4 decades. It's a long period of time, man.
Technically, yes. The 35 years.
35 years, right? So 3.5 decades to complete. There you go. But BlueDragonFive, you know what podcast doesn't take 3.5 decades to complete?
Which podcast?
Pretty much every podcast in the history of the internet, because no podcast is 3.5 decades long. But I still recommend you go to the Movie Machine podcast. It's what happens when you improv a movie based on a random story generator really, really fast. That's right, folks. Go to hotchocolatemedia.net. Get sucked up in all the goofy improv-based awesomeness from our friends at Super Academy. Kyle Decker, Jacob Gulliver, Ben Lifson, and a host of rotating guest stars. Go to the Movie Machine podcast at hotchocolatemedia.net. All right, BlueDragonFive. All right, so where do you want to start with discussing this thing? I am just, I guess, do you want to give overall opinions? I mean, you kind of have a format you want to go over, so I'll let you take the reins on it.
Sure. Well, before we get started, let's kind of discuss what kind of brought us to this, and we both had kind of the simultaneous initial.
I mean, what I'm wondering is, should we both kind of go round table and just give our overall kind of like thesis statement opinions of this film before we get into the format that you have set up?
Sure. You first.
I love it. This documentary had my heart pounding. Like, there were... The way that they have the framing device, Dragon, I think that's the best thing about it. The way that kind of like the past lines up with the present. There's some very stressful and intense moments. There's some moments that just absolutely reflect on why we love filmmaking, why we as geeks choose to get into geek culture and resonate in geek culture. And just really inspirational, but also just really, really harrowing at the same time. And Dragon, there's moments watching this movie where I was just on the edge of my seat. I was biting my nails. I was sweating. It's like, oh my God, they did such a good job of really like getting you into the frame of mind of these 3 people and their journey throughout the decades to come to this. And it's such a well-framed movie. And it's just, like I said, it's a perfect conclusion to Indiana August. It's a perfect kind of like round table, like, well-rounded, like, let's just close the book on this. Let's close the book on Indiana Jones. Let's celebrate Indiana Jones in an awesome way. This totally exceeded my expectations.
Very good, very good. I was hoping you were going to like it, because again, it was kind of to a moment kind of brought me to this, but before I get there, can I explain to you how lucky we were to get this when we got this? Let me just say, again, overall, I was also very impressed by this, and very much like you did. Again, I was on the edge of my seat every moment of the way. I mean, there were moments. I mean, I kind of knew going into it, because kind of moments of familiarity. We saw, you and I have both seen, unbeknownst it was going to be presented in such an excellent documentary, but we had seen clips of this Raiders of the Lost Ark fan adaptation. We'd seen only a clip of it and people commenting on it. We really didn't give it. Probably remembered it, but we didn't really give it a lot of thought until Indiana August really like, oh my God, yeah, this thing actually exists. So I mean, yeah, again, I was like, I expected it to be like harrowing in places, but there's so many little unexpected moments, all these little touches. Like, yeah, I mean, if you were gonna do that, you really get the process of filmmaking, and it's reminded it's over 7, year period of time and for the past segments. Like, oh wow,
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
they went through a lot. And again, I really think intrigued me most about this documentary and the trailers I saw was the fact, there was a personal struggle. And I really loved that they showcased that and really humanized the characters, and it really kind of gave you a story, not only just in adapting a story, it's kind of the story of what goes into that. So I mean, I love kind of I love the personal touches. I love that we actually meet the mothers of these kids, of these crazy kids that made cinemagic. It was a lot of interesting things. Again, it's so serendipitous that we kind of got this when we were doing Indiana August.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was released on streaming on, I think, like the middle of the month, right? Like right around like August 16th or so, I want to say.
Yes, and a little before that though. But I mean, it was more so on DVD. We'll say that for a moment. Let's go over kind of our initial introduction to this person. So again, we watched. Tiki and I are big fans of another documentary, a Spielberg collaboration called "People versus George Lucas."
Which that documentary is, I think it's kind of like a candy bar for the brain to a certain extent, because it's not the most emotional or anything like that, Dragon, but it's certainly just very, very, very well made and very funny, and just gives you an incredible look into the fandom surrounding George Lucas, and kind of like the bipolar quality that comes along with it, loving the original trilogy but hating the prequel trilogy. So
yeah, and it's a very intellectual piece in many respects, because it does really call into question our thoughts and the cultural perception of George Lucas, and also there is kind of a subtle arc in that film about how how Lucas is perceived, and perhaps you can kind of get to know the guy through kind of people talking about him. It's an interesting piece, and again, the subject for another time. But the point is, we're big fans of People vs. George Lucas, very informative, and there's a segment in People vs. George Lucas, and this is kind of our introduction to this piece. Chris Gore, he runs one of the kind of, it's a film critic's website of some kind. Like Chris Gore, he's a film critic of some kind. He's kind of talking about this, and and interesting enough, he starts off the movie in this film. He's the silver-haired guy at the beginning who talks about. Right after the opening credits, he's the first guy we see, and I think that might be a subtle nod to People versus George Lucas, because he was kind of the main voice for that piece. Then again, he just might be really attached to this film. That's why he kind of started this off, perhaps. Either way, point is, Chris Gore. I remember Chris Gore talking about Raiders of the Adaptation, and of course, the main clip, the two clips showcased. The big one is lighting themselves. A little story about lighting themselves on fire and using mason jars, like. Basically, a little magic kind of thing where like the fire will have no kind of descend and more manageable stuff, but also they kind of figured, well, just wrap me up in a thing, put gasoline on me, then put me out. And just the idea, oh my god, that's so reckless and dangerous. And you see kind of there's such painstaking measures to recreate every scene for 7 years. And again, it's like a little offhand reference. Oh, they did this for 7 years, and here in the adaptation, I was impressed by it. My one gripe with the People versus George Lucas is, I wish the end credits of that movie really showcase which fan films are which, because just it's listed all the credits, you can't really detect like which one's which. So I'd love to check a lot of those out, because they use pretty much almost every footage of every piece of footage that relates to Star Wars or Indiana Jones is pulled from a fan film of some kind.
Right, yeah. Because that, like you said, that's kind of like a legal loophole around the showing the clips.
Yes, and again, I think the biggest flaw, as much as I love that film, it's a very minor thing. I wish they had like the names in the corners, like you see in other documentaries, the little name in the corner, like what it's from.
Yeah, because there's a lot of interesting things that you kind of like want to look up and look further into. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this was one of them. And for the longest time, I maybe one time typed in Raiders Lost Ark fan film, and this came up. A lot of other alternatives I knew wasn't the exact one, because it lived for like 7 years in the making, all sorts of stuff.
Just out of curiosity, you've seen Stuckman's video about his Raiders fan films, right?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, he had a very similar thing where he was just recklessly. He had one shot in particular where he was holding on to a car, and unlike these guys where they kind of fake the car thing, he was holding on to a car dangling from it as it was actually moving.
Well, I mean, to be fair, this car was actually moving too.
Well, I know, but the person was like actually driving it, and the motor was running and everything like that. Anyways, I'm sorry. I don't mean to derail it.
My point is, again, these guys go painstakingly recreate that. We saw a little bit of the driving scene, but primarily the whole lighting themselves on fire story. And I think there's a quote that Chris Gore had that really summed up the film, and I think sums up this film too. It's the Raiders of the Lost Ark adaptation, and what we're going to be talking about here is he says, I'm paraphrasing here to a degree. Other fan films may have better acting or better effects, but this is the best fan film because of the love and care in it. Pretty much, it's pretty much like the effort and the hearts in this film, and that's pretty much always. I don't know why that always stuck with me because I'm a big advocate. I'm a huge advocate of fan films. I love good fan films, particularly Batman fan films and Deadpool fan films as well. But those two are my
Batman
favorites.
and Deadpool. I wonder why you could possibly like those two particular characters.
Feel proud of yourself.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just giving you some playful ribbon.
My point is, any good fan film that I came across, usually stemming from those two searches. I'm more willing to check out kind of what people have been cooked up. I've seen Tiki. I've seen some of the best fan films, and I've seen some of the less than best fan films. So I mean, I've always kind of, again, also People versus George Lucas showcase tons and tons of Star Wars fan films, which is kind of uncharted territory for me. Again, like an obvious thing that's never really looked into it, and I go, oh my god.
And one of the awesome things about George Lucas, one of the things that you have to give him credit for, and Lucasfilm in general, is that they actually supply people with sound effects and hold contests for fan films and stuff like that.
Which is awesome. And so again, just that quote that this guy had about, it always stuck with me. They got Raiders scene from that documentary, and that quote of other fan films may be better, but this one has the heart in it. And you basically root for the kids to make it out alive. That's that quote and that kind of that following thing. Like at the end, you're just rooting for these kids to make it out of this alive. It always stuck with me, and that's why this fan film was in the back of my mind. So here's how we came to talk about this, and how I came to recommend it to Tiki here, folks. So I was looking for additional Indiana Jones documentaries because there's a really excellent one in the box set that we've hyped up throughout all of Indiana August. But we all have this mystical box set of
right.
disc.
That's our personal Ark of the Covenant right there.
Which includes this excellent making of. Again, we've compared it to the Empire Dreams documentary, only it's separated in parts. Let's not get on a tangent about it. But the point is that's kind of my main frame of reference for a lot of the research. It's really informative. It gives you a lot of really good stuff to work with. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I was looking at that, just kind of getting ready for Indiana August, but at the same time, I was also maybe looking for some additional documentaries. And while I was doing that, I remembered, well, you know what? Because I came up with nothing, finding any other documentaries on Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I really only had that. For a really good documentary.
Right.
Point is, I was then kind of remembered, oh, wait a minute, what's the other documentary? I was thinking about George Lucas, People versus George Lucas, but that's more about Star Wars. We have one scene of Indiana Jones, and then I remembered that thing I just mentioned, the whole the Indiana Jones fan film part. And then I say, wait, let me check that out. So again, I typed in, I watched the scene just to kind of remind myself, and it's this thing if there's any clue about what exactly called, because I looked at it 4 years ago, and it's like, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the adaptation. I just typed in something like Raiders of the Lost Ark adaptation, maybe 7 years or something, like old, famous fan film. Other things. But my point is,
so you're doing your own internet archaeology at this point.
Yeah, the point is typing in Raiders of the Lost adaptation, Raiders of the Lost Ark, a fan film of some kind.
That would be a good title. That would be a good alternate title for this movie, Raiders of the Lost adaptation.
Yeah, all sorts of things like that. And eventually, I came across this documentary, and it was for purchase, and I didn't purchase it online. I was contemplating it, but here's the serendipity of it all. So again, I watched the trailers to see if I wanted to pursue this, because again, it could just be say I didn't know how good it was, because again, unfortunately, I can't really find just the straight adaptation itself. At least you can maybe find 10 minutes of footage of it.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame. They should put it up, man.
And
I pay $5 to watch it on Amazon.
And here's the real surprising thing: the DVD does not include that. The DVD doesn't include the original documentary. It's still bummed. I mean, the original recreation.
Well, I mean, I assume you'd probably have to put it on a separate disc, but...
Well, I mean, it's a 2-disc set, I'm just saying,
it is a 2-disc set. Oh, wow.
Even there's a Blu-ray. I mean, you can fill tons of stuff on Blu-ray. The point is, it should be available. But, it's one gripe I do have with this movie. It's not even on the movie's fault. It's just on the release.
Do you think that has anything to do with licensing?
I can't say, but now Disney owns it. That might be the reason. I can't really.
Yeah.
Then again, it is kind of their faces. There aren't really any likenesses to pay. But then again, the movie, and they use basically one clip. They use the trailer and like the plane scene for comparison later on. That's the only two things of footage they use. But I'll get into a fun copyright story later on. All right.
Oh boy.
Uh,
Is it a
that they,
copyright story on?
This one is. It's the one. It's the only good copyright story.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
My point is, I was watching the trailer for this, and they basically the big sell line for me was while they're making this documentary, then they had kind of the issues backstage working on this. You know, for years they've been separating, so them coming together to film this one scene. Like they filmed every scene but one. Pretty much what sold they got in the beginning of this movie sold me. And coincidentally, the DVD was released this month.
Yeah, like we said, kind of like smack dab in the middle of the month, right before we started with Indiana August.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I keep thinking that the online is available even before this month, but the point of the DVDs...
It could be, because, I mean, online streaming, that tends to be the pattern right now, right? That it premieres on streaming services before...
Yeah. Bugs the crap out of me, too, because I think it's such
I know it does.
Because, again, Civil War will be coming out be coming out this coming week, and I'm going to have to wait for the DVD. It's going to wait for.
Well, I mean, you can't rent it on Amazon, because that's what I did with this movie. I rented it on Amazon.
Well, yeah, I prefer getting the hard copy. That's my thing.
I know, but just saying, if you want to just watch it once. Anyways, it's not important. It's not important.
Okay, my point is, because I was getting Elvis meets Elvis and Nixon, the one we reviewed. I rented that one on Amazon. It's kind of a rarity, but I had kind of an opportunity to present itself. My point is, I was thinking about kind of doing that for this one, and then I realized it's coming out on DVD soon. So I watched the trailer. I was sold, and I think I'll bite the bullet. I'll see if Tiki's interested, which she was for the conversation, and got to watch a few commentaries on it. Kind of made it also worth the buy. And also that's another sell for me that has commentary. It has two commentary tracks, which is good. And that's how we got to talking about this film, which is very impressive. So here's the origins for the project. Unless we have anything else to kind of go over here.
No, take it.
Now, here are the origins of the project. You can kind of see this through the course of the film, but here's just kind of like it's exposited in the film. So, three lads from Mississippi, they bonded over a love for Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981 at crucial points in their lives. Eric, who is I would argue is our main character. Eric spots Chris's Raiders Raiders Marvel comic adaptation.
Yes. Very much in the same style as the Star Wars comics.
Oh yeah, very much. And there are tons of movies that do this sort of thing.
Of course. Especially back during that time period with Marvel.
Absolutely, all the licensings and everything. Even they did even Star Wars way back in the day too. Again, it's real close in proximity to when Star Wars came out. Yeah, a few years. Point. So again, I love that they kind of bonded over doing an adaptation through an adaptation itself. And again, Marvel. Again, there's a full circle thing for you, Marvel. Marvel, Disney, Marvel. Way back
Oh God! Right.
It's such a fun web that we weave, isn't it? So the point
We're
is,
storytellers. That's what we do.
Anyway, so Eric spots Chris like at school or something. They're like 11 and 12 years old. He spots he has his beat up Raiders of the Lost Ark comic book. It's an adaptation of the movie. Again, the movie hasn't come out on VHS back then. It's just been in theaters. It's pretty much like kind of the script to go on. So he was thinking about making a movie about it. There's the ultimate script in front of you there. Eric had the idea to make the film adaptation, and Chris would be the leading man, basically the guy that kind of fed into that because he went to him first, and they need an effects man and also kind of a cameraman. So they go to Jason, who we're going to meet later on. They borrow a news camera from one of the boys' mothers to shoot the film, and they reshoot again and again over the course of 7 years to the film that we've seen clips of presented to us today.
Cool.
So let's quickly summarize the plot here. So again, here's the plot of the documentary. Here's how they kind of Tiki, as you said, it's a really well weaved kind of narrative we got here, which we'll be talking about in Access a little bit later on, where they kind of weave
absolutely the best part of the movie is the framing device.
Yeah, they weave the narrative so well with kind of the past and the present segments of the present dilemma versus kind of the past dilemmas. Again, out of the old messes into a new one. Some sound similar?
Right, right.
Anyway, here's the plot, folks. Cliff notes of the plot. So we had Eric Zala and Chris Strampolos. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Born as Eric and Chris here, they seek funding to complete the plane scene from the Raiders adaptation, the last scene. Eric takes an impromptu vacation from his job in game design.
Which leads to like the single most stressful fucking scenes I've ever seen in a documentary, practically.
One of my favorite scenes, actually.
Oh God, I was just we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
We will save for some favorites there.
Yeah.
So, Eric takes his impromptu vacation from his job, which adds a lot of pressure. That's kind of a subplot we got going on in the film. We see the origins and the process of the adaptation reflected on by all who were involved. This is intercut with the difficulties in shooting the final scene, and ultimately we see the highs and lows of the making of the film and the time crunch of completing it right. This leads to a lot of personal growth and kind of the big question of the whole piece: will they be able to do it in time?
Yeah. All right.
That's the plot.
So let's break down some characters then.
Sure. Let's start with Eric.
Eric. All right. So can we kind of talk about just the arc of Chris and Eric kind of simultaneously? Because I feel like that's important. I feel like kind of it's important to kind of document the differences between their personalities. Because Chris was very much the roguish type, like very much, very appropriate that he played Indiana Jones, of course. But he was like the wild card of the bunch. And Eric was always definitely the more sensible one out of the friendship.
I'm getting the sense that your favorite character was Chris.
I mean, my favorite part of the movie was the dynamic of Chris and Eric, and you can't have one without the other, so... And what I like most about it, Dragon, kind of why I want to talk about it as a duo, if you don't mind, is just, like I said, I feel like the relationship that these two form is very true to life, and it's just very relatable towards how friendships kind of form and then devolve over time. And I don't know. I mean, if you do want to kind of break it down character by character, that's fine. I understand that. I think kind of talking about them like kind of as a unit is very interesting.
I'm saying we can talk about it as a unit. I'm just getting you what I'm saying is like getting a sense that your favorite character might have been Chris, and my favorite character was Eric.
To tell you the truth, my favorite character was actually Jason, but we'll get to it.
Throwing my metaphor way down the crapper. Okay, let's talk about them simultaneously then.
Womp womp womp. But you know what I'm talking about, right? Just the whole it's kind of like a yin and yang sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, Eric, he had the vision. Again, he started the whole process. He's the one he was a big comic book fan, which again led to kind of the Raiders kind of being kind of the proverbial script for this awesome film. Maybe why he took the Raiders, perhaps.
Of course.
Anyway, he was the real driving force behind this thing, and as you mentioned, he was the straight man of the group who moved on with his life, and Chris kind of resented that.
Yeah. Now, when we're talking about the characters, one of the things we have to kind of break down is how they were as kids versus the arc they had as adults. How do you want to approach that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of just it's from kids to adulthood to now, so it's kind of a threefer.
Right. Because I feel like the most compelling parts of these characters are when we get into what happened kind of like at the tail end of the film shoot, of the initial 7-year film shoot, which is kind of one of my favorite moments. I kind of want to save it. But so honestly, Jack, I'm kind of having a hard time talking about this with kind of tiptoeing around that pivotal part of the documentary. But so help us out.
Well, let's just for the sake of kind of organization, let's go through their sides of the dynamic.
Okay.
Let's go through Eric a little bit here. So again, Eric, even as children, he's the guy who's kind of organizing things. He's Belloc, cuddly enough. I
love that shot of him maniacally laughing as Belloc. That's just perfect.
And again, you see through the process, this guy, he can kind of separate. Again, he feels very much like the Spielberg of this film in many ways. He's kind of again, I think he's the most empathetic character for me. You know, he's this guy who, yeah, he's in a very precarious situation. He's kind of almost in kind of like the Jaws vein of Spielberg, where he's putting it all on the line for this film. He's got a lot of stress on the side there. He's just trying to make this work. You're rooting for the guy.
Sure.
Chris, it's more of a personal journey of like, you know, it's not that he's seeking redemption per se, but it's that he's just kind of like he personally needs to finish this, and Eric he wants to finish this. Like, you know, it's kind of like he's going through Chris is going through the more trying time. So emotionally, on some level, he probably kind of needs to finish this film. Eric just,
which is honestly kind of why I can relate to Chris just a little bit more, I guess.
Well, certainly, and I love what I love about their dynamic is I love how Eric, he's, you know, the way he's moved on with his life before Chris did. Chris eventually has the same arc that Eric does, but at a very kind of differing level. And again, it's not completely is that Chris, in some level, they both have affected each other in a really interesting way. Where by the end, Chris was right, and Eric, by the end, you know, he gets into the filmmaking a lot more. He took the gamble on this one. Again, he kind of says no to her. Again, it's so funny how cinematic it worked out in the end. It feels so much like a movie. Is that in real life? Again, he kind of it's not explicitly said in the documentary, but you get hints of it in like little text at the end. It's kind of saying that, you know, Eric basically after kind of Spielberg kind of gives him kind of a pat on the back, the proverbial pat on the back. They get into filmmaking, and he kind of projects the kind of the corporate system he was affiliated with. He kind of goes into filmmaking, which is kind of what Chris has been saying. He gave up. You know, he gave into the man, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that, you know, Eric, he settled down. He had young Raiders fans, which were awesome. The kids were great, by the way. I mean, those kids, they had perfect lines. They had perfect edited lines in this film. The best one was asking, you know, what would you rate Raiders? And the girl says 4.5 stars, and he's like, the brother says, oh, she says that to everything. What would you give it? 4.5 stars.
Oh God.
And of course, this is one of the star-making lines here, where he says Steven Spielberg made this movie for like around $20 million back in 1980, 1981. My father's did it with his allowance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty impressive. Again, like the kid just puts in simplistic perspective. Like, he's absolutely right. This is impressive. It took 7 years with no funding, with very little funding, but still, come on. And again, eventually, Chris. So one of the best things of his character. Well, again, let's save most of that for later on, I should say. But
Sure.
the point is, you see, settle down again. There's a big motivation to finish the last scene, which is kind of like that the fact that his Eric's family does play a big role in kind of his motivation for finishing the last scene, where Chris is more like it's a personal, more on him than his family in a way.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of funny because like we relate to Eric in definitely kind of the sense that his job's on the line, his livelihood is on the line, and with Chris, like you said, it's much more just kind of like a personal, just I guess with him, his whole kind of like his childhood is on a line in a way, you know what I mean? Because with him, finishing this is kind of like just the end of his journey to a certain extent, whereas with Eric, because it was Eric's idea and Eric was kind of like the main man behind it, he's definitely got more of a, you know, not like they both have personal attachments to it, but Eric definitely has more of a, you know, a financial and kind of business attachment to it to a certain extent. You know what I mean? They're kind of coming at it from, not that Eric isn't passionate about it, but he's got that baggage.
It's more like Eric's coming from a nostalgic sense of this would be nice to finish. It's kind of like the last unfinished thing we did. And Chris is like, it's an actual kind of like, it's not nostalgic. It's in the moment. He's like, it's a part of his. No,
I have to do this.
It's a missing part of his character that has just kind of had, that was just, you know, his not personality, but, you know, it's just of who he is as a person. It's kind of like, again, I think the interesting thing about this film rewatching is that when you think about these guys, they all gave up basically they gave up their childhoods to make this film in many ways. Mm-hmm. They did. They gave up, you know, the fun parts of their childhood. They gave up their summers and all their breaks, all their free time to make this movie. It was a dedication that, and we get to see kind of the positive and negative side of that. The positive side is, you know, Eric got to at least try his hand at directing, and Chris, on the other hand, he kind of had a negative experience of, like, you know, we did this, things kind of sour towards the end, and, you know, they all went through trying times during making this film. You get to see how the trying times affected Chris. I mean, they all kind of had the Spielberg seal of sadness with divorce.
Right.
did. Which again
Spielberg's Seal of Sadness, indeed.
feels fitting, by the way. But again, just it feels just so cosmically fitting that again all these kids are suffering through divorce. And I assume the editor had to do that on purpose, of showing kind of the Spielberg tradition of divorce in this film. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, with Eric, by the way, so I want to say, I emphasize with the poor everyman asking for time off so much. I'm going to highlight that a little later on.
Yeah.
Again, in the end of the movie, with kind of their dynamic, just by the end of the movie, I like the friendship has led them to success and more enjoyable, nostalgic opportunities. It's a great middle ground for both of their arcs. So let's talk a little bit more about Chris before we move on to Jason.
Okay.
Let's see. So just again, Chris had a rough upbringing. You saw an abusive stepfather. This guy had a lot of tragedy in his life, which you can see. I would argue, especially on the rewatches, that this film for him was. You see, I think the reason he was Indiana Jones today, this is my theory, is rewatching. So I think it was the wish fulfillment of being Indiana Jones as the ultimate escape. As not only do you get to kind of remake Indiana Jones, you get to actually be Indiana Jones, and that was kind of his way of escaping from the harsh realities.
Yeah, definitely.
It was true for all of them through divorce and all sorts of other stuff. And it was just regular old escapism. This was escapism with purpose for him. And he physically went through with what Indy did in a way. I mean, literally, he's putting himself risking himself life and limb to
setting himself on fire and getting dragged underneath moving vehicles and whatnot.
Fair, he didn't set himself on fire, but he was around a lot of fire, though.
Fair enough.
And again, you get to see a lot of humanity on Chris too, where Chris is we get more of the human error. And again, I think in many ways, nostalgia is the perfect word to describe Chris, because we all see kind of mistakes that we've made in Chris. Basically, he represents kind of the young man in many respects. It's kind of like the youthful error.
Definitely.
He makes some human cocky mistakes. He just kind of gets a little. As a young guy, he gets huffed up, and plus he's the star of the film too. So you get to see kind of Hollywood entering a system at an early age through this film, which has a negative effect when it goes that way. Which, I mean, it's very interesting, actually. Again, he goes to the Hollywood experience later on.
Sure.
It's a tragedy. The guy has a lot of tragedy in his life, but I just love how much I love that he kind of has a happy ending by accomplishing this goal, and you get to see it in a really lovely moment later on. I mean, in the end, he gets his friend back in many ways, just for kind of the stuff he's pulled in the past, and just kind of for dedicating all his time. He gets vindicated. It's like, this was all worth it. Again, he helped bring the dream to life. So, Chris is also an interesting character.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't really have a lot to say about him that hasn't already been said outside of the stuff that we're going to get into with Freight.
Yeah.
So,
why don't you take us through Jason? Jason Lang.
Jason. All right. What I like about this guy is that I have totally, absolutely, 100% been in his position. He is kind of like the friend of the friend. He is the third wheel, and it's so empathetic with that, Also, he's just a very, very quick-witted guy. I actually probably think out of the three of the friends, he probably gives the best interviews and the best sound bites. He's just really, really comfortable in front of a camera, which I appreciate. And I don't know, there's just something about his sardonic wit, and I love how, there's absolutely, you can tell that even though there was a falling out, he does have a huge sense of respect for what they're trying to do. And he's not bitter about it in any way. You know what I mean? That's what I love about his character. It's like he acknowledges what happened in a very adult way. It's just like, people see things differently, and sometimes that kind of conflicts with what we want to do. So Jason really is kind of like the voice of reason in a lot of ways. When we have Eric and Chris kind of feuding with each other and kind of like their friendship breaking apart. Meanwhile, Eric's just kind of on the sidelines watching it all devolve. Dragon, I'm sorry, do you have Eric being left out of the interview as one of your favorite moments? Or I'm sorry, Jason being left out of the interview.
Yeah, I have. Well, I mean, that's not one of my moments, so take it, but do whatever you want with it.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, that's absolutely like one of the most fucking humanizing things in this movie is that, we have Chris and Eric, being asked to do this kind of like this very hokey, like local Mississippi news station interview. And, and and Jason's not involved in it, and Jason never was even like asked about it or anything like that. And it's like it's such a small thing, and in the grand scheme of things, this hokey little interview for a news station. But man, it's like one of the things that this documentary does brilliantly, Dragon,
is perspective.
Perspective, and also kind of just how high scale and high stakes like minor incidences can seem when you're a kid and when you're growing up. You know what I mean?
Mm.
How it's like stuff like that is just like life or death. It's just like, and also the whole the girlfriend thing, which we'll get into. And so very much what I love about Jason is he's just absolutely like, in addition to like, we get to see a lot of creative stuff on his end. I mean, he's a special effects wizard for the fan film. So, he's just kind of a naturally, he definitely gives me kind of like a Greg Nicotero vibe. Greg Nicotero is the head effects guy for The Walking Dead. And definitely has a lot of the same kind of sardonic wit and sense of humor about him. So, yeah, like I said, Jason, very relatable, probably gives the best interviews in the movie out of the three main characters, and liked him a lot.
Yeah, and he's eccentric but creative. I get a sense, and I kind of read him a little bit differently. I'm very like mine. A lot of them like you are, but so there's this one with the interviews. I kind of get the sense that he's not good with interviews. Like he
Really?
thinks he is, and it's like he thinks he is, and he's comfortable in front of the camera. But I think the idea is he's not good at interviews. And I think that shows on kind of a solo that he felt it's think about this thing. It's so interesting that he felt shafted in in the credit in being not being properly credited in that interview, and he feels that all the like a few articles come in the paper and like they're photographs. And he probably is credited within the article, but he's seeing the image visual wise, he's not getting the credit as credit's due, and that's because he's not there during the interviews. He's not sought out for this because they're worried that he's kind of an eccentric and he can't handle interviews that well.
Okay.
That's why he's left out. That's my theory. Because the thing about this, especially on the rewatch, has really occurred to me.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, I just kind of naturally gravitated to him as a podcaster myself. I mean, I'm not saying he's a podcaster, but, as someone who kind of, like, speaks, speaks in front of a camera and whatnot, I gravitated to his presence, Dragon. Am I just crazy? And do I like him because I'm awkward and he's awkward and therefore, is that a thing? I don't know.
Well, I don't charge a nickel per hour to tell you that sort of thing, Tiki. But listen, no, seriously though, this is the on the rewatch. That what kind of occurred to me is that every time I didn't notice this before, I was kind of flabbergasted. I didn't notice that every time when he's almost every time when he's interviewed, it's mainly when he's giving notes on the production, they kind of fade out while he's talking, and that gave me the sense that maybe that there's a reason why he was left out of the interviews because kind of goes on and on. There's one thing that was mentioned on the commentary. It's a little fun story that it's real fun. It's like nothing detrimental to the guy. I'm just saying when eventually they got a little meeting with Spielberg. At some point they get a really awesome meeting with Spielberg, which we'll talk about later on, I suppose. But there's this great thing when they're leaving the office. Jason here, he turns to Spielberg on the way. It's like, oh, meeting went well. Let's just head out of there. He turns to Spielberg and he says like something crazy, and they're all freaking out. He basically says, Mr. Spielberg, I don't care what anyone says. I like the color purple. The movie. I don't care what the critics or anyone said. I like the color. Spielberg gives him the response of, oh, well, thank you.
Oh my God, that's true.
And the two of them are freaking out. Just get out. Let's get out of here. He's the first speaking too hard. What are you doing? So I'm getting a sense that might be a reason why he's not in the interviews. They're basically kind of through a misunderstanding. He kind of, at the time, it might take it a little bit more personal. Again, the real kind of last straw creatively was the whole like model plane versus like actual giant prop plane.
Right, yeah.
So again, he's just kind of an eccentric creative type. Again, he's really creative with the special effects, especially for his time. The idea he's super creative with the effects, but doesn't have any formal training or anything, which does lead to a lot of risk, and we see that. I do love the sense of perspective on this guy. I want to make that very clear. I love the sense of perspective on him, where the heating plaster, I should say, the heating plaster they put on Eric's head.
Yeah.
it heats on the inside, and the problem is he didn't put Vaseline. You get the sense of regret of like, I was supposed to put Vaseline on the eyes, I didn't, which led to him being encased in it, wouldn't slide off, and one of his eyebrows came off.
Oh, Jesus.
And he does generally regret the mistake, and I think that's what's may have led subtly to the to kind of his acceptance on the project. Like he's just kind of there as a token. He knows he's not like he's kind of out of the project, but he's just he appreciates being there on the day that it's all coming together.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, so Jason's a wild card, most definitely, but he's definitely invaluable to the effort. He really brings a lot of kind of the risky, but again, it's like he pushed it. It's like the best way I can describe it is I love that he was the guy that kind of pushed him to the edge, and it really shows, and it's really why they kind of doing a lot of this dangerous stuff. But my God, you never get away with this nowadays, but back then, my God.
Right.
All right, let's move on to real quick. Angela Rodriguez, who played Marion. Sorry, so I love that from Raiders. Just one mention, and Marion. Anyway, so Angela Rodriguez, I like that she kind of represents the reason we're highlighting Angela Rodriguez, aside from the fact that she plays a pretty good Marion.
Yeah, she does.
And she seems, as they mentioned, she kind of captures the spirit of Karen Allen in many ways, which I can definitely see that. I think we should talk about her because I think in many ways she represents kind of the outsider to the obsession, which was a lot of the cast, and like on and off, like just kind of friends and family they knew who would kind of be in the movie.
Right. I am surprised they got this girl to commit so much of her time to it.
And you didn't see this because this mentioned in the commentary, and I don't want to take it to a dark level here, but of course, they recreated every shot.
Oh, God.
Which included the dress scene.
Oh, God. Right.
Look, I don't know what happened. I remember in the commentary saying they were looking for this footage, and they couldn't find it because they theorized, just for the documentary, I mean, the footage itself, I don't know what the deal is with that. The point is that they're looking for the footage or something, and, maybe not the footage, no, not the actual footage from the movie, but the footage of the making of this scene, because they wanted the making of this scene. And it was the making of the bra scene, unhooking the bra, changing into the dress. From behind, tastefully done, but still has to be shot. And I believe they recounted that someone took that footage and
oh boy. Oh,
basically you can again. It's not. Let me say, I'm not taking it to a dark. It didn't end up the way you're thinking about it. All right, it didn't end that way. It's a fun.
Are you sure about that?
Can I tell you, or would you like to assume more?
Sure. Go ahead.
No. The thing is, they were. The footage would have confirmed this, so they're unsure. They believe that some of the other guys involved, not our camera guy, not Jason, but someone like peeking through to see from the other side. They were trying to peek through, like teenage boys. It's like an Animal House sort of setting, and not like doing horrible things with the footage like you're thinking. But the point is that footage though is lost for ominous reasons. Like, why is that footage lost if peeking through the thing? Anyway. So let's move on to. I'm sorry. Anything else to say about Angela Rodriguez? I like the fact that they got her back though. It was pretty nice. Even just for a running away shot, they got her back. Hooray!
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the younger brother, Kurt Zella.
Holy shit! There's like a whole cavalcade of dogs barking outside. Can you hear that?
No. Okay.
Good. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway, so Kurt Zella here is kind of the loyal younger brother. I like he's kind of like the yes man yuppie. He's the right hand man because there's a bit of a kind of subservience with the older brother little brother relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I like that he's kind of like the Walt Flanagan of the piece, with like multiple roles. It's like like constant roles. Like, you people should. I'm going to report you people. No, not that Walt Flanagan, but you know what I mean. It's the fact that it's Kurt Zella. Obscure clerks reference, folks. Get with the times. Mm-hmm. We're talking about age-old 80s footage here, man. I'm going nearly another decade or so into it. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, I think it's kind of adorable. I like that he kind of gives perspective on things. Just a little thing I wanted to mention. The Kurt Zella is kind of the helpful brother. Gets not in the thick of the danger, but still he's playing like every other role, and he's also getting firecrackers lit on him. So he's, luckily he's unharmed. Let's talk about kind of one of the star makers of the piece here. Let's talk about Eli Roth.
Yeah. All right. This guy, kind of a very polarizing figure in the horror community.
Yeah, read off the bona fide for this guy, would you, Tiki?
Well, I don't have his whole filmography in front of me, but I know
Just give him a few pieces.
he's best known for Hostel. Hostel, obviously, part 1, part 2. Not sure if there's any sequels past that or if he's involved in them, but I digress. Hostel, part 1 and 2. Cabin Fever is my personal favorite movie of his. I think Cabin Fever is kind of amazing for what it is. And then he just recently did The Green Inferno, which is a cannibalism movie. So he touches on a lot of, like, like Hostel is all about, like, essentially torture and whatnot. So he touches on some very graphic subject matter. But in this documentary, Dragon, say what you will about his movies, Brad Jones absolutely cannot stand Cabin Fever. That's like one of the big running jokes with the cinema snob.
So you're saying Brad Jones doesn't have cabin fever?
Yes, I am saying he cannot stand Cabin Fever. Yes, but anyways,
I've got to do.
But
anyway, sorry.
No, say Brad Jones. Say what you will about the man's filmmaking, but he was the hero of this movie.
Yeah, you don't have this movie. You don't have them finishing the last scene without this guy.
Right? Yeah, definitely.
I love that on some level. This didn't occur to me until now. Oh my God, Eli Roth. He is the Indiana Jones archaeological. He goes on the Indiana Jones archaeological journey to find this film.
Right.
To find the long lost Raiders tape. It's in his own adventure, and he's the guy. Yeah, I love that an Indiana Jones like adventurer kind of brought the film. He found the film. Not only did he find the film, he presented it to the people in a way, not going in a museum, but kind of being presented to people.
Well, you know what? It does belong in a museum, Dragon. It does belong in a museum.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, how cool is that?
Right. Yeah, and then also not only that, but he also kind of did extra archaeological research with looking up the actual people behind it, and seeking out landing on Jason and everything.
Yep.
Which kind of led to, like you said, the plane scene being completed.
Yep.
And I just really quickly, I also want to highlight Harry Knowles. Just Harry Knowles he's so nice. He's so pleasant in this documentary. He's so complimentary.
Yeah.
Of course, the runner of Ain't It Cool News. Anyways, so is that it for Eli Roth then?
Yes. Eli Roth is a very important role in this film. He's he kind of the reason for the film itself, and again, he's the unofficial Indiana Jones of the piece, which is pretty awesome.
And he's much better than David Lee Roth.
Yes. So, and he's touched the plate. He's just and he's been. I'm gonna go talk to Jill. Anyways, moving on.
If anyone wants to comment and say what that's from, we will give you a cookie. Like, I will literally ship a cookie to your house.
No one wants it. Come on, send me a cookie.
Who wants a pizza roll? I'll mail you a pizza roll.
Right, well, now we're going to shoot for life. You're paying the fee on that one, mister. I'm not affiliated with this Philistine. I'm not affiliated with them. Okay, so let's transition from characters. We kind of run the gamut of characters without getting into every little nook and cranny. We're going to talk about kind of a big get they had for the film with the framing device. So let's talk about the big man himself. Let's talk about the amazing, the incomparable John Rhys-Davies framing device.
Oh my God! Yeah.
So John Rhys-Davies, I was so surprised and so pleased to see this film start off with John Rhys-Davies providing kind of this. But again, John Rhys-Davies is a guy who could read the phone book and you just be, oh my, tell me more, John Rhys-Davies, please tell me where the local Pizza Hut is, please.
The local Pizza Hut is on. Anyways.
But seriously, I love that he kind of adds. It's not just through his voice, but through kind of this. He's actually basically they got a 20-minute interview with John Rhys-Davies, and they sprawled it out through the film. These really interesting places. He kind of takes us in and out of acts almost, like he's like the 3-act structure is kind of used with John Rhys-Davies in a way. He has like 4 little clips, I believe, like 4 to 5 little clips that are kind of played.
They definitely use him very economically throughout the movie.
Yeah, he has the last word in the film before we see the end credit sequence, and then he's of course beginning, end, and he has a few separating parts in the middle, which are really neat. Yeah, and I love that. It's one basically here's a few of his basically the big kind of prolific things he says. He actually has some really good prolific lines he says here. He basically kind of compares the effort of these young filmmakers, and he had no idea what these guys were doing until basically the filmmakers here. And again, so let me make it clear: the guys who made this documentary are not the guys that made the Raiders film.
Of course, right.
I'm not saying they couldn't do it. I'm just saying, it's one documentary. You don't want just kind of.
Well, I'm saying they couldn't do it.
Well, yeah. So, point is that John Rhys-Davies didn't really know about this project until they brought it up to him beforehand. They figured, okay, well, I'll tell him about the project. He's kind of speaking kind of from the heart about kind of this creative process. Boy's been told about him for like another, I don't know how long, maybe a half hour or something. They're telling him about the whole process, and maybe they show him a few clips. Point. So John Rhys-Davies now he's informed. He's just giving like an awesome 20-minute interview, which is sparse throughout the thing. And, like one of the things he says, like he compares the effort of making this thing to pursuing a treasure. It's like pursuing a great treasure. And again, it's very much what they're doing. These guys are kind of pursuing a treasure like Indiana Jones. They're pursuing a treasured memory of sorts.
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing he does greatly is like the second one I think he has, and the second kind of chunk of John Rhys-Davies, you have him like mentioning. Remember the Hunter's monologue? He says like the little Hunter's thing he mentions.
I remember it. Yes, I mean I couldn't like quote it or anything, but
yeah, sure. I'm saying, yeah, he compares it basically when they're seeking out Jason specifically at that point in the film. It's mentioning that he basically goes on this thing about hunting. When you go hunting, you need to collaborate. Basically,
I have to wonder what question the people interviewing him asked to get that kind of response.
Yeah. But really, like neat thing was kind of talking about the importance of collaboration and pursuing something, mainly in hunting. So they're kind of hunting for what they desire most here. And again, it's something you need assistance on. It makes the thing go a lot easier. And again, it's very useful in these moments in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And also just mentions the frame of. I love that he mentions the famous I filled my gelato in front of 200 people and I didn't care moment. I love it because that's from the Raiders. It's from that Raiders bonus material disc. Yes. I remember that because that's again John Rhys-Davies could read the phone book. He could tell you anything. You just give it the most. You can turn diarrhea into a Shakespearean soliloquy. That's what he did. The fact that you mentioned the point is John Rhys-Davies he's very, as you said, economically very, very wisely. I love that in the first act, just kind of bridging off from John Rhys-Davies, the other framing devices. I mean, also with John Rhys-Davies, he has this great thing where he says, if you want, basically what you should say, if you have a plan, plans don't always go the way you want, which is very well paralleled with the difficulties in filming.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's this excellent quote John Rhys-Davies says, where he says, if you want to make God laugh, there's an old prophet or someone who says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him you have a plan, which, oh my God, that's so classy, so brilliant. That's absolutely right. Yeah, you tell someone you have a plan. Of course, day 9, still rain. So yeah, they had 9 days of rain on this thing, and just it's out of one mess into another. Again, 9 days of just straight rain when you need you need like 2 days of no rain.
And there's like certainly a ticking clock element of it as the days go by, and it's like, oh no, it's day 7, and they're 37 shots behind schedule. Oh
and
God,
the shot list increases, yeah. Boy, I mean they were lucky to kind of still be able to get that one day. We'll get to that a little bit later on. So there's just so many great framing devices and great motifs in this film. I love how the first act has this great bit of Tiki. I don't know if you caught this, where they set up the obstacles and the doubt. Like as they're right before they're about to shoot, says like the beginning, and we go through kind of the origins of the project. Basically, as they're all kind of journeying to the spot where they're going to shoot everything. It's like it's mentioned that they're basically being warned of all the difficulties, which all come true, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Where basically it's April. It's a rainy season, first off, which is again foreshadowing the rain. Why people on radio basically giving a lot of deflammatory comments saying these guys just wasted their life. Spielberg should sue them for doing this. And also, it's explained by Dan Todd the worries of an explosion not going right or going wrong.
Man. Oh yeah,
Again, all of this comes back in a very fun way, very interesting way.
Okay, but let's break down kind of the two alternating timelines of this movie, which I thought was the most fascinating element of it.
Sure, take us through it.
Well, like we said, we have kind of the very, very narrow shoot schedule where just all hell's breaking loose. I love Dragon. I love this is like documentary filmmaking at its best, where like day one, they're all happy and they're all just joyous, and it's just like, oh my god, we're back, let's do this. And then by day 7, they're like all in the mud and swearing at each other, and like people are quitting, and there's like half the crew's like walking off, and so it does a great job of just like gradually building up that descent within the present day stuff. But then of course the past stuff just really does an excellent job of kind of building these characters. And what I love about it is how you kind of get dimension on who these people are as you learn about more what happened to them in the past. So, like, you had the revelation that Chris was into hard drugs for a period of time, and that just makes his presence on the set just all that more like, okay, like, he's definitely got some stakes in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as things get more heated up, you now care about the characters even more than you did beforehand.
Exactly. And it's got such a great way of playing with that. Like, I'm really impressed just kind of thinking about it, just watching it once. I think this documentary is going to be very rewatchable for me because of that.
I've watched it a few times myself by this point. Let me tell you this. Just speaking of the past, there's a great little editing thing they did here. And again, with the John Rhys-Davies framing device as well. Like, there'll be, like, in addition to a bit that he said, I mean, I loved it. Like, when you see them, like, as you mentioned to you, they're pulling the plane forward, they're yelling at each other, and they're just trying to, like, kind of move it towards the scene. They realize, oh, no, it's not going to work this way. And they're going to shout at the guy. We then cut to the 1980s filming.
Yes. Oh my god, I got chills when I saw the making of footage. Oh my god.
And again, now T, we've probably seen this making of footage over the years.
Of course.
Yeah, we know it. But then again, in the context of this film, seeing what these guys are going through, then the moment that happens, it dawns on you, oh my god, they're kind of going through a Spielbergian experience here of like the difficulties of shooting this, and that's when we get the whole Phil Modulata thing from John Rhys-Davies saying, and at the end, pretty much saying, oh yes, we had very. Again, I love John Rhys-Davies kind of taking us through the past here, giving this grandiose quality, which also, importantly, sets the stage for later on. We go to the past yet again during the filming of the plane scene with Steven Spielberg on set. Again, they're building Spielberg up through these kind of on the set of the actual Raiders flashbacks. So we're building the mystique of Steven Spielberg, so you feel his presence all throughout the Raiders stuff.
Yeah.
And what's great, again, is John Rhys-Davies not exactly. I kind of like that John Rhys-Davies doesn't know the ins and outs of this whole filmmaking of what these guys went through. Kind of, there's this great line he has where he says, as he's talking about the difficulties they had shooting in Tunisia. It's then mentioned, I hope those lads didn't have to go through the same experience. Which again is so great, just saying, oh my god. And of course then we cut to them going through all the horrible stuff in the present. It's like, oh my god, they're going through so many difficult things right now.
And just a quick thing on the editing, Dragon. I really love how we just get the moments in the fan film kind of contrasted with like stuff that's happening in real life. Yeah. I can't think of specific examples right off the top of my head, but like when there's like a perilous situation, like let's say like something's going down with a stepfather or something like that, then it'll show like Indy getting into a fighter. That's just like kind of a random example that comes to my head, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Where they use the fan film to kind of like illustrate points that they're trying to make with what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, I'm sorry I can't come up with any specific examples of it. Just really like that device.
Well, I love that they cut from kind of the beginnings of the past to the present, and I love how the low points, just overall the editing, I love that the low points kind of match with we see a low point, then we cut to the current low point. So, I love just that intercutting of kind of past tribulations to current tribulations.
Yeah.
And also, I love that. In a way, I love that Sala, he kind of bridge. Basically, we have John Rhys-Davies going over having one of his interjections there, and then we cut to the mending of the relationship between Chris and Eric with through Last Crusade. In a way, so again, Sala is in Last Crusade as well. So if you look at it, Raiders, which they're filming. Dark moment in their relationship, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade being the happy ending.
Exactly.
Again, Sala involved in both, and again, being the framing device for like, oh, I hope things are okay with those guys. And hey, Last Crusade, which it's all in it. It's a little subtle thing. I doubt it's intentional. It's a little thing to read into. Last thing I think we should mention before moving on. I love. I love the old VHS footage. I love how we begin this documentary with the old kind of VHS footage. It just puts you in the mindset, and it feels like that great kind of homemade quality.
Mm-hmm.
And I love kind of the motif. We have these various great motifs of VHS tapes. Like we have the premiere, and then after the premiere, it's like mentioned again. The mystique of Spielberg plays so well in this film. Where he says his mother asked Eric, I believe, well, what are you going to do? What do you want to do with the film now? It says sent to Steven Spielberg. He says, oh, he'll never get that. And then we have the fantastic Ark of the Covenant shot with the VHS tape.
Of course, yes.
You know, like the warehouse Ark of the Covenant scene, where like the VHS tape is in the shelf, and you hear the
just
music
like lost and forgotten within all the. In Dragon, I have so many things like that from my childhood, like like vacation footage of stuff that I'd film at Disneyland and stuff like that are just laying around my shelf in very similar, probably locations to that tape.
Yeah, it's so it's so great, and again builds that mystique up. And of course, when that tape is going to be the coveted item for Eli Roth later on, it's even better. And again, I also love the motif, connecting that to storage warehouse. First off, second of all, just I love how it we see the inner. Basically, what they did to get these shots, they have a VHS player. And they basically they broke it open so they could film the inside of what's going on, so it looks like they're on the inside of a VHS player.
Right.
It's pretty cool. Seeing the inside, except for all the whirling mechanisms and everything, gives you a sense of like you are the tape inside. You're seeing this whole thing unfold. It feels really. It's like you never see those sort of shots,
Yeah.
Well, unless it's Breaking Bad, but you know what I mean. All right, let's see. So perhaps we should move on to just let's talk a little more generally about kind of the adaptation as a whole. Let's talk about the process of adaptation. Just kind of compare it to this film.
Okay, now what do you mean about this exactly? Do you mean like talking about like the adaptation of Raiders that we see, or or adaptation is like a broad concept? God, I can't talk. I'm sorry. A broad concept.
Yeah. Both, but let's start with broad concept. Let's work to the documentary. So let's just talk about kind of like we've seen that. Adaptations kind of boil down to kind of like the 3 R's. You got remakes, you got reboots, you got rebrandings. Look at films, look at comics, look at all sorts of things. Again, it's like remake is shot for shot. Reboot is we're inspired by
not necessarily shot for shot.
For the most part, they're. Wow.
No, not for. I'm sorry, not for the most part. Gus Van Sant's Psycho is kind of like a rare occasion where it's a shot-by-shot thing.
I mean, there are other.
I'm sorry, Dragon. I don't mean to like step over you. I'm just like most remakes aren't like shot for shot. It's like that. That's why Gus Van Sant's Psycho is so maligned, is that it is shot by shot. I'm sorry. I feel so bad because I'm stepping all over your point. I'm just like.
Okay. Let me revise my point. Another R.
I apologize.
Another R. Are you happy, D? Are you happy for crushing my dreams? Anyway, so back to the 3 R's. You have remakes, reboots, rebrandings, remakes, retelling the same story.
There you go. I'm sorry, it's just like Gus Van Sant's Psycho is kind of like a talking point within this discussion, so yes. I just wanted to make that distinction.
Reboots are kind of a different angle with the basically difference between a remake and a reboot is reboot is kind of like it's kind of a different direction with a familiar source, but basically taking a source material, the initial version of something, kind of doing it in a very different way. It's not just like telling the same. It's not telling the same exact story. Then you have a rebranding, which look at what DC's doing now. Rebranding it so that they're basically it's the same stories, but they're kind of like taking you to the beginning again by saying it's a little different.
So essentially, like the New 52.
Yes, but also kind of what they're doing now with the whole like rebirth thing, where it's like just they're doing it. Basically, it's like not just like. Because that was a relaunch. It basically relaunch and rebrand pretty much the same thing. It's like we still have the same characters and everything, same stories, but we're kind of taking it back to the beginning in different ways. Mm-hmm. My point is these are all kind of like forms of adaptation. You're taking a familiar story and you're kind of bringing it to light in a new way. And there are various ways we've seen adaptations over the years. We've seen adaptations again of film, comics, books, you name it. We've had you can see like various kind of levels of this. You have like loving fan service and faithfulness. You have like various like just three examples off the top of my head. You got Watchmen. Watchmen, which I think is it's an adaptation. It's not precise. It follows the book in a loving way, but in visually in many ways, there are tons of Easter eggs, but of course there are differences, and some of them are done to improve the story. Some of them are done to make it economic for a film.
Mm.
Other, like you can't really. It's kind of hard to sell a squid, so you got to kind of alter, make a little homage.
The squid. I mean, I give Snyder a lot of shit, but I actually really appreciate the squid thing, and I think that gets too much hate because, you're right. It's hard to sell that to a screen, and B, I actually think the compromise that he made with the squid makes the story flow better. So
yeah, it gets on like Dark Knight Returns, the animated film, very faithful. I mean, very in line with what you want. That's sort of my opinion, my personal opinion. I think it's better than I prefer it personally to the book, but it's but each attachment.
Oh man, that's a controversial stance.
Yes, but I have a huge attachment to that. I have a huge attachment to Batman in animation, so that's probably why, at its core.
Of course, that makes sense. Yeah,
I might like it better, and also I think it's a more consistent art style, which no one can really argue with me on that one. But again, I understand it is controversial.
I just think people, probably the main thing they miss is the narration, of course.
Yes, absolutely, and that's what was. Yeah, my next point was again, it's an adaptation. It's very faithful, and there are a few alterations. That is the most observable. Again, that's kind of translating something distinctly from a different format, which you have at Watchmen, but you also have a Dark Knight Returns. That it's so you can it fits a lot better in a comic versus a film.
Sure.
The internal monologue and stuff, but you get some of the best, most iconic lines from Dark Knight Returns because Batman's a real silent guy, so he thinks a lot. Thinks the word balloons, thinks the thought balloons, I should say. Mm-hmm. And of course, you have like Batman Year One. Forget all the comic examples. You're saying they're kind of most proving my point. So Year One is undeniably, it's panel for panel from the comic as best they could. I mean, there are a few PC changes, like there's no smoking, but aside from that, it's exactly the same thing. I'm just saying those are like kind of three varying examples of adaptation, and I think what's so interesting about this film in particular with adaptation, they go from like how much of a fan service do you want to make in the world? How much do you want to take in your own?
Can I give like two examples?
Sure. What do you got?
Okay, I have Peter Jackson's King Kong, which, I mean, say what you will about it. Yeah, it is a little overly long. It probably didn't have to be 3 hours. But what Jackson did with King Kong was he basically took what was fundamentally a very simple story and just made it more epic. And while, there were a lot of scenes that were kind of course, you have kind of the big benchmarks of King Kong. You have the Empire State Building, the fight with the T-Rex, the King Kong emerging from the gates and all that. But Peter Jackson just really just made it a grand sense of scale to the whole thing. And there wasn't any kind of shot-by-shot stuff to it. I mean, there's little Easter eggs, like King Kong kind of playing with the T-Rex jaw after he snaps it. So there's Easter eggs in the film, but it's definitely not shot-by-shot. And then, of course, Dragon, I just kind of have to point to Psycho again, because that's just like one of my favorite moments in the movie is when Harry Knowles compares this to Psycho, and I think this can kind of transition into what you were going to talk about, where it's like, people fucking hate Psycho because it's taking like one of the best movies ever made, a movie that Dragon and I just, of course, have a very personal affinity for because of our Bates Motel love, and just Psycho, it just kind of bastardizes it because it does it shot by shot, but without any of the passion behind it, without any of the care behind it. Of course, Vince Vaughn was a fucking train wreck as Norman Bates, but that's a whole other thing. But and with Harry Knowles, he's saying like, yeah, this is like way better than Psycho. This is like so much better than Gus Van Sant's Psycho, because even though it is shot by shot, you can tell there's a passion behind it. There is a driving force behind it. The fact that these kids took like you said, they essentially kind of sacrificed like the teenage part of their youth, all those summer vacations to put this product together. And that is absolutely kind of what defines it. But I'm sorry, Dre, I just kind of wanted to point to like King Kong versus Psycho, just in terms of like the shot by shot thing. Like I said, the Psycho is very maligned, probably for the very reason that it is shot by shot. So
yeah, and then this film goes shot for shot, but with elbow grease is the way I kind of like to kind of summarize that. It's like this film is
the dog instead of the monkey.
I really do like the dog instead of the monkey. I gotta tell you. I mean, no, not in comparison to the original. I'm not saying the dog's superior to the monkey. Of course, I'm just. I don't know what it is, Steve. I really think that dog's adorable. Little Snickers.
Snickers, yes.
Snickers the dog. I think it's such a clever idea.
The way they get it to give the Nazis salute.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, how do you have a adorable Highling dog instead of an adorable Highling monkey? That's a Nazi traitor and deserves its date-related death.
Oh God.
Anyway, my point is that with things like that, you do. I mean, this film goes for kind of the most infamous of reboots, which you think about without getting too into it because they don't want to rise controversy. But
it's not controversy. I'm just clarifying.
I mean, you have like Gus Van Sant's Psycho, and you have in like Ghostbusters. That would be the controversy part.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Gus Van, the remakes are like completely viewed by the public.
I would actually kind of like that Ghostbusters thing is like in a weird. That's also kind of like one of the reasons why it was so maligned is it couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a remake, a sequel, a reboot, or all three at the same time.
Right. Point is, you have infamous examples of things that are perceived as, or actually are, just kind of in the remake, kind of shot by shot territory, like kind of plot by plot territory. One of the two case points, and anyway, so. But again, this version has a lot of elbow grease, and I think reading into it, just kind of looking at how this adaptation stands, is that it's it brings up. It really occurs to me on the rewatch. Looking at this, just kind of the purpose of adaptation in general. So this really brings up the notion of telling the same story with less means, in every way inferior but distinct. In every way it's inferior to Raiders of the Lost Ark, of course, undeniably.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Yeah, it's because they made a better movie than Raiders," but yeah. But it's not. It was never meant to be a better movie than Raiders. They were never being like, "Hey, we can show this Spielberg guy a run for his money." They were doing it with all the respect in the world towards Spielberg.
Yes. So again, in every way, it's inferior, but distinct. And you see, there's such a great level of showcasing Raiders with this. Sorry, what I'm trying to say here, I'm just on the line there. Sorry. My point is, I'm getting at is like it's distinct in its own way. In its own way, being it showcases a Raiders of the Lost Ark, but with a transparent kind of bare-bone filmmaking and nostalgia applied to it. It's like it has like all these other things to it. It's like the same movie, but it's you've seen this movie. You know exactly how it goes, literally beat for beat. You know exactly how this movie's going to go while you're watching it. And here's why: because it's like a new experience with Raiders. It's Raiders, but like what if you saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it was kind of a transparent bare bones. Like you can see all the filmmaking in this. You can see every little I understand how they made that in the filmmaking. And not only is it just like why am I watching just the making of a thing during the making of one, you'd never see that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it is coded through this kind of this nostalgia of VHS. It's like you can see kind of it's a time that's like a lost gem to history. It has all these other factors at play where you have other remakes that are just kind of doing it like Gus Van Sant Psycho is doing it just to purely have like a colorized version of Psycho without actually doing the heresy of colorizing the original Psycho. It's like, well, let's just remake it and basically this will be the Psycho for the new generations. Forget all that good acting. Forget all that Herman awesome score that is only complemented by the visuals, not just let's just not do any of the original stuff and burden it with color. No, let's just remake it in colors because kids will accept that, right? That when the adults are saying, "Hey, you ever see Psycho? How great is that Psycho movie?" Kids check it out. It's in black and white. I don't care. And they says, "Oh wait, there's a Psycho in color. I'm going to watch that." So I know the story. Yeah. Again, that's the wrong mindset. Absolutely, that's the wrong thing of doing a remake. It's that's the wrong way to go about it. This is like a remake with a distinct thing you've never seen before. So in a way, it's like a whole new experience with the film. You see what I'm getting at?
Mhm.
And the point is, it's an adaptation. Adaptations can vary from different ways of making an adaptation, going about it. Again, like through shot by shot, kind of different ideas. The genesis switching certain things around. This one is like it's switching one thing around. That it's like, what if we made Raise the Lost Ark, but again, like with none of the means and the production values of a Steven Spielberg production, it's like kind of an elbow grease type production. And because of that, such a earnest kind of,
Kind of an interesting analogy here. I think the experience, especially like we see the great moment in the film where it's screened for the fan festival.
Yeah.
And we see kind of like people's reactions to it. The first time we see like I believe it was Ernie Klein or someone was talking about having goosebumps. Like, oh, I'm still having goosebumps just talking about it.
That was Ernie Klein.
And by the way, awesome that Ernie Klein kind of showing up in another documentary. Love that guy.
Yeah, and again, bring it all full circle with Spielberg, man.
Of course. But you know what I'm going to compare it to? Because the great thing about it is that people are kind of like, oh, what's coming next? What's coming next? I think it's kind of like watching a great adaptation of like a book or something like, or maybe even like, I don't know, like Dragon. I'm kind of reminded of like the first time I saw the Aladdin show at California Adventure for the first time. And this might sound like a weird comparison, but it's kind of like seeing iconic scenes like that, like in Aladdin, but just done on the stage. It's kind of like you get that same experience of like, oh, how are they going to pull it off? Like how are they going to pull off Aladdin escaping from the Cave of Wonders? How are they going to pull off the Friend Like Me parade with the Prince Ali parade with the giant elephant? How are they going to pull off Jafar turning into the snake or flying the magic carpet? And so it's kind of like a similar experience to that. You know what I mean? Where it's almost like a slightly, like it's not a different media, but it's definitely kind of like, okay, like let's see this, but let's see it done in a different way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if that's like an elaborate metaphor, but this kind of just came to my mind as we were talking about it.
Yeah, but it's like it's kind of it's a remake not for the sake of making a remake. It's a remake just purely out of love for the thing. It's knowing it. It's kind of self-aware from the get-go of like, we're going to do this like earnestly and like this is honestly is what we are genuinely trying to make a good movie here. Basically, service you can just feel the love for the original source material brimming off of the film. And it's like it's brimming off of like radiation. You can feel it, and that gives you a good feeling inside. Like, man, these guys are real big fans of the movie. Look what they did at 11 and throughout all the years, and the commitment to this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's like it's not good, but it doesn't matter. It's look at the effort that went into it. And that's the whole. And you film it again. The fact that again it's not good. But here's what's good about it, though. I hope the whole rest of the film's like this. Unfortunately, we haven't really gotten to see that. But again, it is.
Sandy Claus actually kind of commented, and apparently it does kind of travel around to do screenings, and that's the only way you can see it.
Right.
So, I'm sorry.
What's great about it is that it's every. The point is, like, especially with the end credits, which I'll mention in our next segment here, but we have. We get to see how it lines up because literally every shot is shot for shot. So you appreciate again while it's like like you said with the whole Aladdin comparison, it's like for a different medium almost. It's kind of like it's you see how they went about it, but again absolutely in your memory for the love you have for Raiders of the Lost Ark. This absolutely is how that scene went down. This is how it would look if it was on like a lower budget. It's like think about the craze we have now. You remember Be Kind Rewind?
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's a good comparison. That's a good comparison.
Pretty much, this was the original. It was a big fad nowadays. This is the whole like again with the fan film thing I've mentioned earlier. There's also a great deal of kind of sweeted versions and kind of like fan remakes on a low budget where they will recreate like trailers and stuff or scenes from movies, but it will be with absolutely very very low budget. Like they create all the costumes with cardboard stuff.
I saw that someone did a recreation of the. After Today song from Goofy Movie, and it blew my mind.
Oh yeah, we talked about that during the.
That's right. We did talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's move on to some. Unless you have anything else you would like to kind of say about.
No, I kind of said my piece with the Aladdin comparison. I'm good.
All right, let's move on to some favorite moments.
Favorite moment. All right, you want to go first?
Yes, I love the moment where Indy shoots the guy who pulls out the sword. No, let's talk about this movie's favorite.
Nice. Well played.
Okay, let's see. So, man, there's so many good moments here. Let's see. I have a few brief ones. Like the moment it kind of dawned on me, like the little things I never considered before. I love it when they kind of they knock. They're in the Marion's bar set, which is, I believe, the basement.
Mhm.
Point is, they're in Marion's bar, and like they're knocking over a table just like the shot in the movie. And the take one, take two, take three, and the fact that kind of dawns on you. And this is the first time I think it kind of just clicked with me during the film. Is like, oh wait a minute, yeah, they have to reset that each shot. So then like on a very very low budget, they have to put different bottles and everything on there when they knock them down. Like
right.
because they can't just like reassemble them or have like a whole warehouse full. They got to get those bottles. Luckily, the stepfather was a drinker.
Oh boy. Oh god. Oh boy.
So
dark humor there. Dark humor. Oh boy.
Well, he started it. He said, he threw the dog against, he kicked the dog and broke its leg. He laughed about it. I can make a little alcoholism joke.
That was like a shocking little moment in the documentary, by the way. I was kind of like relieved that we didn't get further detail into that whole stepfather thing, because it would have just bummed the whole thing out.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So let's see. So I love one of my favorite scenes. The Boulder stories are a quick one to mention. The Boulder story is pretty fun. Remember they mentioned like they went through all the boulders. We saw like the pitiful, like thimble-looking one, like that thimble-looking one rolling down because they were hoping to get it from a better angle, so it looked, it takes up the whole frame. It does not.
Oh god.
Very. Like, I just love the fact we didn't see the other boulders. Love they describe all the failed boulders. Love how it's edited. Just saying, well, we tried this boulder out of bamboo stalks, and they made it look good, but they couldn't get out of the room because they built it inside the room. Other one, there was like a one that was pretty much
Wasn't
like
there one that like literally got washed away in a hurricane?
Yeah, it's like a It sounded like it was like almost like a tumbleweed sort of one.
Right.
Basically, it was blown away in a hurricane. The other one was a hot air balloon sort of thing, just popped.
Deflated. Yeah.
I love that they edited. They didn't say it deflated. It's edited to like pop.
He's like, that's all you need to know about that attempt.
And then the last one was this boulder, which is a great symbol for the movie, by the way, because that boulder is like kept in the back of the house. It's covered up by some trees and
kind of round it back to Indiana August. We kind of talked about how the boulder has like fucking 15 seconds of screen time in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's on screen for like literally less than half a minute. And yet, it's almost like the whole symbol of the entire Indiana Jones franchise to a certain extent.
And in many ways, Tiki, the boulder in this film, we do see the footage of the actual kind of finished, kind of awesome looking boulder,
which looks awesome. I mean, you can see it right there. It's great.
Yeah, and with that boulder, the great thing is that it kind of is a great symbol for this movie too, because one is kind of kept in the backyard, it's in a very familiar place, but more importantly, in that scene you're seeing right there is this boulder, it was made. It's a fiberglass boulder, just like the actual boulder from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
It's not as big, bear in mind, but still it's pretty big. Just to show you that they're really
for a man film, man. For that kind of budget, it's like holy crap.
Yeah, the point is for kids to actually make kind of have a boulder made like that and be able to have kind of that sort of quality of boulder. I mean, that's pretty close to the.
One of my favorite parts about it is like when you see the footage, you can actually like hear it rolling down. Like they get the genuine sound effect of it too.
Yeah, the only difference is like they made their boulder bigger in the actual Raiders films. This actually was probably a boulder they started with. So they got really darn close on a budget for like how to do stuff in Raiders, and it's a great example of like these guys had they had the means, they might have been able to pull off a lot more stuff. Who knows?
They also kind of lucked out with some of the resources their parents had.
Yeah. So let's see. So other thing I want to mention before I get to like kind of last. Let me talk about my favorite scene.
Okay.
My favorite scene, one of my absolute favorite scenes, is the phone call scene.
Oh God, Dragon! My heart was pounding during this scene. I was on pins and needles. I was like, oh fuck, oh this is awful. Oh I never want to have a real job. I never want to have a real job because this is so much anxiety. But go ahead.
Yeah, so this scene really embodies why I really like the Eric character. Well, again, Eric the guy. I know it's like we're in this weird space. We're calling characters, actual people characters. But I mean, they're kind of for the purpose of the film. They play a lot of characters.
The John Peters character in The Death of Superman.
Okay, now he actually
a fascinating character.
He actually was a character. Come on. My point is, these guys play characters, so it's they've kind of earned their roles. And the point is, Eric. That's why I really fell in love with Eric here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love the quality of Eric, where he's the everyman. It's such a human moment. Everyone's had to do this pretty much, where they're they're making a call asking for a favor, particularly asking for more time off or asking for a certain day off, and that's always Tiki. That's the worst. That's the worst thing you can ask for. It's just one of the most wrought with tension moments, and they capture that so well on film here. Where it's the camera guys in the room, they actually spoke. This is the directors of the film here. Basically, it was a completely improvised moment. They had no idea. They had no idea the call's coming. So they're there, and then
I was gonna ask, like, is it on speakerphone or what?
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
get
on
the audio.
No, he put it on speakerphone.
Oh, speakerphone. Okay.
It's on speakerphone, and it's on speakerphone. Based on the second time is the most wrought with tension moment for the whole film because they're wondering, oh my God, is he gonna get fired on camera? What are we gonna do?
Right.
They're wondering what the heck's going on. Anyway, so again, it's such a wrought with tension because again, we see from the get go the setup is like the boss is saying, well, look, you're asking for a big favor here for you're taking a vacation at the worst possible time, but you're allowed that vacation, so okay. And I like that the boss isn't a bad guy. Again, he's
but at the same time, he sounds genuinely pissed at the situation.
He does. He sounds again. It's like Angry Ed Big Jr. This guy. He's just sounding really not to the same effect. Bear in mind, but still, he sounds like kind of that boss. So he's kind of he's coming from an understandable position.
It's like the stern and disapproving father type.
Well, somewhat. Yeah, that's the point. It's just he's kind of chewing him out with very, very valid complaints here. Saying, "Well, you take a vacation at like a spur of the moment, worst possible time." I understand. I can't really tell you no on that, but still, it's kind of unprofessional. Second, and you're doing it for a movie too, which is real kind of. It's not poo-pooing the movie. I'm just saying, of all the things you'd be taking a vacation for, it's not like a family emergency or anything.
Sure.
And then on top of that, he asked for 2 more days off. And by the way, the reason he asked for 2 because it's a negotiating tactic. He asked for 2 so he can get 1. That's the idea.
Oh, okay, nice.
That's why. So he got 2. So he did win on that deal. That's you always start whenever he asks for a day off. He always. Well, I mean, if you're in a really tough spot, I should say, don't ideally do this. But if you need to. If you know that you have something really important, ask for 2 days off, and then you whittle down the one. I'm not the guy. I heard that in the making of that on the commentary. They mentioned that's why it was 2 days. That's so clever. That's probably what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I've never been in that position. But you should always plan ahead, asking for your days off, though, folks. You got to negotiate. You do have to prepare for that. So, ask for the whole day when you need a half a day. That sort of thing,
Right.
And my point is, it's such a scene wrought with tension. The guys on the other line there, you see all of it reading on Eric's face. We've all been there. We're waiting on the edge of our seat, wondering what the guy's going to say on the other end. You see the whole when he's getting shoot out. He wants part of him might want to kind of speak up against the guy, but he just can't because he knows he's in the right and he knows. Again, you're talking to your superior and you can't talk back, and you feel so bad for the guy. And in the end, he gets what he wants, but you still feel bad for him because the boss just kind of chewing on him.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's a great thing about the scene is like
2 days, but this is all I'm doing for you. You cannot miss any days, or it's the end.
Right.
My God, it's so tension filled. It's the most heart pounding moment of the film.
So basically, if he catches a cold, he's fucked.
Well, I mean, cold means still coming to work, Tiki. If he has to go in for surgery or something, then he's screwed.
Okay, fair enough.
Unless he gets injured on the job, then he's fine. Remember, folks.
Technicalities, yay!
Folks, if you ever pull a Ferris Bueller, you're caught and you have like nine sick days, and you need 1 more on the job injury.
Oh God! All right.
That's the Chicago way. Anyway, so sorry, random Ralph Garman reference. Anyway, so Ralph Garman. Sean Connery, technically, but it doesn't matter. My point is, last 2 things I'm going to mention here. I love the Spielberg letter moment. As mentioned, I love the score. It's like after the plane scene, where everything looks like it's going to heck. We have this wonderful moment of we kind of distract from the aftermath, where it's like we have this lovely moment where we go to Hollywood, where they meet Steven Spielberg. We don't see him meet Spielberg, but we see the photograph, just the story and the whole thing of the letter, and it's such a
I was telling you off air. It's like I understand why it's a tall order to get Spielberg for an interview, but how perfect would it have been if Spielberg kind of showed his face in the last moments of the film, oh my God, I am so inspired by what these kids did, and it just brings that tear to my eye. How great would that have been, Dragon? And
essentially, that's what he says here in the letter. It's lovingly described by these guys who are generally emotionally touched by this, where they have the letter saying, "Guys, I was really inspired by this, and you I hope to see your names in films in the future. I hope to see your names in the credits in the future of other films.
And that's just kind of like, all right, mind blown. I can die happy right now. And
I mean,
like,
you inspired Steven Spielberg with his own movie. That's impressive.
Right.
And again, it's such a sweet moment. It's like kind of such a whimsical thing. It's like it doesn't get any better than that sort of moment. Like, oh, it's great. And then the last thing was, speaking of credits, the end credit sequence is great because again, I had no idea how great this is going to look. And here's my funny copyright story. So. In the credits, they do this really clever thing. Again, I kind of wish I'd see the whole movie like this, but put all the footage, but it's only a credit sequence. But it fits for the film. You only need to see this one scene in the credits. I like that they showed its entirety, pretty much. We see kind of the comparison of the original Raiders of the Lost Ark footage and the filmed footage that they filmed this movie. The HD camera looks really nice, and it's shot for shot. It looks almost identical. Am I right? Does it look really convincing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If anything, it's kind of Raiders done with a better camera. That's the idea.
Right. That's the funny thing about it. Exactly. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, when I say better camera, I mean, they have like the classic cinema '80s lens versus kind of the modern day camera.
Of course,
so I'm just saying it's like it's a different
quality.
So
in a way, it actually does kind of look like a modern day remake of Raiders.
Yeah, and my God, this is Gus Van Sant. This is how you actually do a shot for shot remake. If you're going to do that sort of thing. Make it look, if you're going to make it look exact.
I don't think Gus Van Sant's planning any more shot-by-shot remakes anytime soon.
Okay.
Anyway. He's kind of like walking off shamefully with his hands in his pockets. I'm sorry.
So, end credits. So, again, I love this great bit where we see both things of footage here. And here's the funny story. They get the rights for the Raiders thing. Basically, I can't quite remember the exact way the story broke down. The point is, they were showing the footage, and is the credits the way you see them. And basically, they were called on something about copyright, basically using the footage or something. They were talking with someone, I believe, Lucasfilm lawyer or something, whoever at the time who was overseeing it. I don't know if it was Lucasfilm per se. Someone over there who owned the Indiana Jones footage was saying, "No, you can't use that footage." Exactly. And basically, see what they did, Tiki, is they used the trailer and stuff, and those are like quick little snippets. It's such a continuous. That's the reason it was a copyright issue.
Okay.
They were using a full scene because they were using a full scene that kind of went on for a long time. It wasn't just like a quick clip or anything.
Right.
And because of that, they were kind of called on. I said, "Well, you can't have that, and you got to take it out." It says, and there's the cleverness. The filmmaker said, the director of this documentary, documentarian probably says, "Well, wait a minute. Which one did you think was the real footage?" And they realized, oh my God, you're right. So they okayed it because of that, because it was so convincing, because they didn't know which version they were looking, because they don't know which one was the real footage.
Nice. That's great.
So upon realizing that, oh my God, they earned it, just let them have it. Let them have it. That is the most delightful thing, and the only copyright story with a happy ending.
Yes, the only one. Not our Temple of Doom story. Okay, so
those are all my favorite moments. Again, a lot of great moments in this thing. Thanks for yours.
Okay, so I'm going to go in chronological order. First favorite moment, early into the production of the fan film, we have someone, their back is lit on fire, and the fire doesn't get put out like it's supposed to be put out.
And that's Eric, by the way. Eric's the one who has like the gasoline put on his back.
Right. And I'm sorry, I just wasn't sure if it was Chris or Eric. But
it's Eric. Okay. Remember, Chris is Indiana Jones.
But essentially, so we have this fire incident that happens and shuts down production for a period of time until the adults decide, you know what, it means a lot to these kids, so we're gonna let them continue, but only under I love this track, and I just love the irony of it. Only under the guidance if the kids have an adult supervising them. And then we cut to a clip of Mr. Peter Kiefer, who he was an extra from, was it Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, I want to say?
I would like to say Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead. And he says he's on screen for like 3 seconds. He gets torn apart by a zombie. So you see, he's got a Budweiser in his hand. He's like, yeah, we only drink Budweiser on this set. So essentially, Dragon, of course, the great irony of this is that, like I can't get over how funny this is. It's like they hire this guy to be the adult supervisor. And yet the adult supervisor is the one who's just egging the children on, basically being like, "Oh, we need more fire. We need more fire." Because I believe they're filming when Marion's bar is on fire, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Marion's bar catches on fire, yeah.
Right. And so it's just like, it's Dragon. I have to echo these sentiments of someone, I don't remember quite who said this, but it's a miracle that house didn't burn down. A fucking miracle. But again, I absolutely love the irony. It just totally just makes me chuckle just talking about it. Of this responsible parental figure who's brought in and just ends up, and you can see it on camera, you can see it. It's the guy is just straight up just like, no, I don't think this looks convincing enough. I think you have to add more flames to it. So the responsible supervisor literally added fuel to the fire. I love it. I love it.
I love how I love how Eric's mother later on is like saying, as she read like an online comment or something, saying that's bad parenting as an example of bad parenting for you. When they're doing the truck scene was another dangerous one too. I mean, it's amazing they didn't get killed during that.
Right.
Because I mean, look, engine or no engine, Tiki. There's
I'm sorry.
There's an actual car behind him that's pushing the first car. So if he falls through, if he doesn't get run over by the first car, it's moving at an increased speed. The other car will basically have to evade two sets of tires if he were to let go of a rope or fall through the front of that first car.
Mm-hmm.
Point is, very dangerous scene, wrought with danger. Again, like you see the legs dangling. I was on the edge of my seat where the legs were dangling from the other guy getting out of the car. On the sides, like his legs were like between the tires almost. Like, oh god, is he gonna be okay?
Okay, so my second favorite scene, and this is not necessarily a scene, it's kind of like a whole section of the movie, is the de-evolution of the friendship between Chris and Eric. Yes. This kind of starts with, there's just a lot at play here, Dragon, and like we said, it's like we kind of alluded to it a lot, and I just think it's very real world. It's very much like, I honestly don't have a lot to say about it that hasn't been said already, but I just love how, they just kind of split off and go in opposite directions. Of course, we have that story of Chris just kind of like being the rebel of like, hey, I'm just gonna kind of like woo over Eric's girlfriend, and he's not really trying to like be sexual with her or anything like that,
Just to see if he could, if he can pull a Fonzie, if he can kind of charm the girl.
Right, exactly. So he invites her over to smoke weed and listen to the Doors in his bedroom. And that is essentially like the breaking point. That was kind of the catalyst for them, kind of that essentially ends the production of the film. Like, no, I'm not working with that guy anymore. But Dragon, it's so haunting to me. The whole element of Eric being the guy who kind of like, essentially like gives up on his dreams, in Chris's words, with taking the job. And I am absolutely in Chris's position in this point in my life. And it scares the shit out of me. It's like watching this 5 minutes, like, oh shit, I better not get addicted to crystal meth, yo. Because it's like, I don't know, I'm just saying, like, I have totally just seen friendships devolve because friends have gotten jobs, gotten careers, gotten married, stuff like that. And I have lived that, and it's painful to experience. Especially because on one hand you're happy for the person and you feel like a dick. You feel like an absolute dick for like not wanting them to be happy, for not wanting them to succeed. But at the same time, there's just such a harsh, cold, stark bitterness to it at the same time. So the way that they just kind of captured that whole feeling, just it hit home with me, man. It hit home with me really hard as someone who's lost a lot of friends because they've gotten jobs and moved up in the world, and I'm kind of just stuck doing my YouTube thing because of, I don't want to get too personal or anything, but
perish the thought.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, though. It's just like, it's such a, oh man, it sticks home with me. I've been in Chris's situation. I am living Chris's situation outside of the crystal meth, hopefully.
No, you could be the next Jesse Pinkman. You have your ups and you'll have your downs, but you
don't say that. Right? Don't say that. I'm not touching crystal meth. All right. I just want to make that clear. I mean, I've openly admitted I'm kind of a stoner, but I'm not going to touch crystal meth.
Well, you say that now.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what scares me. Okay. So on a lighter subject, well, no, it's not actually a lighter
Well,
subject.
let me take it in a lighter direction, for God's sake. Let me take it in a lighter ending.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I love that amidst all that darkness, even things are really dark. The domestic charges. Calls him from jail, and then there's a really tragic moment. I'll lighten it up in a moment here. A tragic moment where Eric he takes the woman I believe would become his wife, and they get out of there, leave him behind. I don't even know if he got him out of jail or not. Point is just after that call, he just kind of left him in L.A. and he moved on with his life. Tragic thing, but I love that after that moment, Tiki, we see, and this is a very clever thing. I heard this in the commentary that they were going to show this earlier on, but they realized after they had that scene up and running, wait a minute, we can just make this more effective by kind of saving this as a reveal. We then see directly after that moment, I believe, again, as you said before, Tiki, all these moments, we see something in the past that then strengthens the present.
Mm-hmm.
Where we then see him hugging his daughter, Chris hugging his daughter, and we meet his wife, and the fact, he got over it, things worked out.
Yeah, you're right. That's absolutely a really good, really well framed reveal, right?
And again, a very visual way of showing that he's become more like his friend, and his friend has come at the end of this film has become a lot like him. So they both have kind of had that paralleling journey with each other.
Well said. Well said.
Okay, so what you got?
All right, so this is absolutely the moment in the film that just completely, my jaw was on the floor when I saw this Dragon. What a way to conclude the movie. What a way to conclude the story. So, we have the build-up all throughout the movie of how are they going to pull off the plane explosion. Of course, we see Jason kind of, not necessarily a falling out, but the disagreement where Jason wants to use the miniature for the explosion and they want to actually blow up the plane because, hey, we built the plane. God damn it, we want to see a real plane explode. And Dan Todd. Now, Dragon, what exactly is he? The explosions expert, or
he's the pyrotechnics guy?
Pyrotechnics. Okay. Dan Todd. Oh my God! The way this whole thing is.
You know what's so funny about Dan Todd? Real quick,
what?
So hilarious. You know who he looks identical to and kind of sounds a little bit like?
Who?
I don't know. He's not a carbon copy, but he reminds me a lot of Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool.
Well, Jacob Gulliver is a carbon copy of Mobley from Mr. Robot, but
I would hope that he takes that well, because then you've just mentioned it on a thing that'll give him evidence of this.
I'm just saying.
Hope you like that comparison, Gulliver.
Well, he's a good character.
He is, but still, compared to a fictional character, not someone's gonna take that. Maybe he doesn't like Mr. Robot. Maybe he thinks it's the Antichrist. Who knows?
Oh, God.
Not everyone's a fan of Mr. Robot. You feeling some doubt?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Anyway.
All right, go on.
So the last day of shooting, we see Dan Todd kind of he's the one that's giving the lecture, right? Where it's like, all right, guys, look, I've been serious about stuff before, but I'm really serious now. This is some heavy stuff we're dealing with. Like, if we're not careful, someone could get really hurt, He's that guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't someone else doing that lecture.
Same guy.
Okay. And then Trey, it's just so shocking where, basically remind me what happens, like how the plane, essentially, like, it catches on fire, right?
Yeah, okay, here's the plan. So the plan for the shoot was, India, Indy and Marion, they run away, and the fuel line is caught. We don't need to see that, but the point is we see the end result of the fuel line being caught on fire, which is the plane explodes, supposed to be like one big old explosion.
Right.
What we do see instead is the bottom of the plane explodes, so it's like kind of a smaller explosion, like. Actually, it's either one of two things. It's either one, there's a stall, then it explodes when he pushes the button again, or the point is, at first it's like a disappointing explosion, then a guy, he walks up there to see if he can fix it so he can go for like another big explosion, so it's going to salvage it in editing, which they do, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But when he walks up there, and again, bear in mind, one of our filmmakers is behind him, a ways away, they get this from a few angles, and they do get the shot. You don't really quite see how they get the shot here, but it's basically, you can see. And he knows, by the way, it mentions he knows this was a stupid move. It wasn't like it's something that actual pyrotechnics guys should be at risk for. But I mean, they are at risk for this. But the smart pyrotechnics guy will never do this sort of thing. He was desperate to get the shot, though. That's why. So he walks up there, is checking it out, trying to see if he can maybe re-rig his planning his next move. And then you see a little flicker of fire, and at first you think, okay, it's like a little thing. Again, we've seen this a bunch of times. Like you nothing really figure. Then gas line catches on fire, and boom!
Yeah, and at that moment, Dragon, my jaw just absolutely hit the floor. I'm like, what? What?
Boom! And the guy takes a tumble. He takes like a stop, drop, and roll.
Yeah, he goes flying. I mean, he doesn't like go flying die hard. He goes a few feet. It knocks about off his feet, I want to say.
Yeah, and our guy's like backs up a little, and then he stop, drop, and rolling. Essentially, that's kind of how he's okay from the explosion. He did that.
And I love how the documentary just captures all the chaos around how it's like the thing keeps exploding. I mean, it explodes like several more times after that. I'm like, oh my god.
Well, the greatest real world details, like everyone's they're running. There's that sense of like panic of like, oh my god, something went wrong, and they're all like running towards him instantly. Not a moment of pause goes by. They all run towards him. They drag him there because they're only dragging him through the dirt because they have to get him to a safer distance from the explosion.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a real-world Indiana Jones moment playing out within the recreation of the Indiana Jones moment to a certain extent.
If only they could have played the music there. There's a man who's unconscious. We don't know
okay.
if he's okay now.
But kind of the cherry on top is Dan Todd's first words when he recovers is, "Did we get the shot?" Which is beautiful. That's just absolutely beautiful.
Why are you cutting my good shirt? But yeah, it's a great little moment there. Like, did we get the shot as his first words? And it said, you can't write these moments, folks. They're just...
like I said, it's such a jaw-dropping, like, the fact that they got it on camera and the fact that it's just like you see just all the chaos erupting around it. It's a very real. You know what I love about it is it's like throughout the whole documentary, we've been kind of talking about how dangerous what they're doing is, but kind of doing it in a very jokey way. And that moment kind of brings it all to reality. You know what I mean? It's like, oh shit. Okay. Like, yeah, if these kids didn't do it right, some very serious circumstances could have come up from it. So
definitely puts it all in context, like what the risk is for this project, even nowadays. I mean, even in the modern day, that there's a huge risk with doing this sort of thing. These kids, that you saw all the stuff they put themselves at risk, mainly due to careless adults around them.
More fire! We need more fire!
Yeah. So again, it's puts it all in interesting context. Even to this day, there are a lot of dangerous things going on. Imagine if they tried this again. The model thing would have been the smartest, safest way to go with, but it doesn't look as spectacular as the big old plane explosion.
And probably the most haunting moment in that whole scene is when we cut to Eric, and Eric's just like, we'll CG it, whatever. All that matters is that people are safe right now.
Yeah, but I love that this film doesn't have an ounce of CG, by the way. One thing, though, to mention, though, is with the editing, again, I mentioned with the Spielberg moment. So, again, you had a moment, you had this explosion. You don't know if the guy's the guy's okay, but then he says, like, did we get the shot? Now, you don't know if he's lying or not, if they got the shot or not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So then, like, you have the glowing kind of whimsical Spielberg moment. Then he says, I hope to see you guys. And then he's like, oh, we're living the dream. And then it just awesomely cuts to kind of the concerned Eric who just said, oh, we're living the dream. And then cuts to Eric, like, really concerned. It's such such a beautiful shot to give him by the big old black plume of smoke, thinking about what he's going to tell everyone.
Right.
Of like, oh my God, it's like visual symbolism. This thing is a disaster. Someone nearly got killed because of something I had the idea with 35 years ago.
Okay.
It's a great one.
So we're kind of running almost a little over 2 hours on this thing, so let's wrap it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, you got any more moments, or are we good?
No, that's all three of mine.
Okay, let's talk about this. We're basically wrapping up here. Is kind of general. This is kind of our last moments of Indiana August here, folks. We're going to talk about, not saying the process as a whole, we're going to talk about Raiders Lost Ark as a film and Indiana Jones' characters. Some final kind of what this thing's taught us and relates to kind of all the Indiana Jones stuff we talked about so far. Particularly Raiders. Let's start with Raiders and build to Indy if we can. So the Raiders Lost Ark was essentially it's another Star Wars level phenomenon, but it was grounded and for the everyman. That was the kind of difference between it. It was like another such an iconic film series.
I honestly couldn't imagine growing up with my, kind of developing my filmmaking taste without Indiana Jones being a part of it. That just seems like I can't imagine.
And really thinking about Raiders throughout this whole month we've been doing stuff involving Indiana Jones here, it's the Raiders is it's something I get a sense that from the get-go this is intended for all audiences. When I say that, I mean it's a film that reeks of classic cinema. Like, it wasn't made for, like, Star Wars in some way. It was made for kids, but to be an awesome movie that, you know, kids would like, and hopefully it, you know, again, it was mainly targeted towards. I'm not saying it was purely targeted towards selling toys and stuff, but it was targeted for being a movie that, you know, kids would like to see as well as hopefully adults. But this film was primarily for everyone. Just was to be like kind of a great film. Again, that's kind of Spielberg's mark there. Again, it's Blue's just like kind of getting a creative idea out there, and Spielberg's going to make like an excellent film out of it. Again, it just reeks of a cinematic classic, doesn't it? Over like kind of like a thing that was like something that was just intended to be a film.
I still find it surprising that it's made like from 1981, which is like, you know, in retrospect, like not too long ago compared to other cinematic classics that we have.
Yeah.
I said, it's just like the landscape of film without Raiders, just like I can't comprehend it. It's just like Indy just defined the modern hero, like we've been saying in the intro. It's like there would not be like a modern action hero without him. I guess it's like, I don't know, Drake, we're kind of living in a different era now. I kind of feel like Indy kind of led the way to stuff like Die Hard and stuff like that. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know, in a way, I've used this comparison. I just think it's very accurate. I mean, this is going to sound a little strange. It's going to get some scoffs, I'm sure, but I think Indy is, in many ways, he's kind of just a Batman of cinema. He's a cinematic Batman in terms of like kind of the level of iconography of Indiana.
I mean, definitely
Jones.
like leading the double life for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, just primarily, he's kind of a Batman for the cinema in that he's iconic, but without a costume. He's iconic with the hat and the whip.
Well, he does have a costume.
You know what I mean? I mean, he's not with like kind of a super.
Sure. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You know, again, he's kind of a Batman for the cinema, without just kind of like someone who's brought to life from the comics. And this guy's brought to life in film first and foremost. And yeah, he just represents. He's the action hero, in my opinion. You know, he's way cooler than John McClane. I know they're different things, but I mean, Indiana Jones. He's so. Again, he's kind of the superhero of action films in many ways. He is.
Right.
And again, Raiders is just it's a great movie that's not just a great action movie as well. As I'm getting with the John McClane Die Hard comparison there. Again, Raiders is just when I'm saying it reeks of classic cinema, I mean it's not just something that just felt like they were making a movie within a genre. This feels like a movie that's just within kind of like every genre almost. It's like it's a great movie that's, you know, not just like an action movie. It's not just like an action thriller thing. It can be, but it's also just it belongs as a romance. There's action. There's patriotism. There's all sorts of other elements in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see in this film. You know, you see. I'm sorry, Dave. Let's. Do you want to say anything about Raiders? Is going to kind of bring a hole to this Raiders in connection to the other Raiders.
I mean, are we going to go through like all the Indiana Jones movies or just Raiders? I don't necessarily know what you're.
Well, let's talk about Indiana Jones throughout all the films too a little bit. Let's bring it home with the movie, though. Let's bring it home with this movie at the end.
Okay, I mean, like I said, we're kind of going over 2 hours, which I think is a little excessive for a documentary. But
okay, the point is, again, Indy's just such an iconic character. You know,
I don't really have a lot to add to that. Besides, yeah, he's iconic. You know, I can't imagine cinema without him. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be sour, Dragon. I'm just, you know, I don't really have a ton to add.
Well, let me say this. I think you see in this film that, you know, the boys were all going through kind of parents' divorces and everything, as we said earlier. And I think Indy, through Indiana Jones and specifically through the film Raiders of the Lost Ark, specifically, it's like not even just Indiana Jones as a character, more so just kind of as just this one solid thing. This Raiders of the Lost Ark, it was, you know, this film and Indiana Jones was the male role model they aspired to live up to. They aspired to live up to this film, aspired to live up to this character in a way. You know, literally, Chris became Indiana Jones through the making of this thing. They always kind of wanted to make something that honored something they loved so dearly. Again, it's like kind of living up to a legacy almost. And, you know, Raiders, you know, let's not talk about all the Indiana Jones films. I think we're talking about Indiana Jones' character well enough. Let me just say this in the transition to final thoughts, if that's all right.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Because I think Raiders, we mentioned this way back in Indiana. I was kind of bringing it full circle. I said, you know, we see Raiders references in everything, specifically Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
It's
even
one of those films, kind of like on the same level of something like Star Wars or The Godfather, where literally it's like you could take all the parodies of Raiders of the Lost Ark and just flip them together and make the whole movie.
absolutely, I mean, there's Raiders references and everything. I'll give you three distinct, like none of them are the same thing examples. You have Rugrats,
Yes, yes.
you have Raiders and Rugrats, you got Raiders and Family Guy all over the place. And you got Raiders and even Toy Story. You got some Raiders references in Toy Story.
Of
Like three
course.
very nothing in common among the three of them all except Raiders.
Right.
I mean, if that's not permeating culture, I don't know what is, Tiki. I don't know what is if that's not permeating the culture as a film and as a character. Like people love this character, love this film. Again, it's the best of all the Indiana
It
Jones
just kind of
films.
speaks to the whole silhouette philosophy of designing character. It's like you see a silhouette of Indy, you know exactly what it is. You know exactly like all those memories. Like you see a silhouette of Indy, and you basically kind of like replay the entire Raiders film in your head.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's go with some final thoughts on this film specifically.
Final thoughts. Yeah, Dragon, honestly, I didn't really have many expectations for this one way or another when you recommended it to me. This kind of sounded like a nifty thing to do. Like, again, I kind of like the whole ties to the archaeology theme we've been running with Indiana August, kind of like unearthing something that's been kind of buried for a little while. And I ended up just kind of really, really attaching to this thing a lot more than I was expecting to. Like I said, I kind of made this comparison a lot, but I do think this kind of lies on the I Am Big Bird and the Boys side of the equation when it comes to documentaries, just because there's so many personal stakes with it. And it's not just, I mean, obviously it's not just a documentary about indie culture, but it's a documentary about, what Indiana Jones meant to these three specific people and how it shaped and influenced their lives. So that regard, Dragon, I just, filmmaking was one of those things for me. I took it in high school. It's not for me just because of all the minutia involved in it, and it's incredibly time-consuming, tiresome, repetitive work to a certain extent. Very, very stressful. Not for me. But I absolutely have a ton of respect for people who do it. Of course, I did make a movie, technically, Cloverdale, which was shot in the grand total of 1 day at a theme park. Yeah, we had one production day, Dragon. So these guys definitely have me beat with their 7-year commitment. But at any rate, very inspiring documentary. And also just, it's just such a good kind of gauntlet of emotions you get in this thing. You get the nostalgia, you get the excitement, you get the the heartbreak, kind of the low of lows. You get the drama, the tension. It's just all this things wrapped up in this funny little story about three kids kind of recreating their favorite movie. So overall, really big fan of this. I'd say if I probably had to rank this in the movies of the year so far, I'd say this definitely deserves the top spot in my top 10 of the year so far.
Well, I can say this. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark, the adaptation, it is the greatest fan film. I agree absolutely with that film critic. It absolutely is in many ways the greatest fan because of the heart that's the heart that's communicated through that film. You see the elbow grease, as I said earlier. It represents what, importantly above all else, it represents what fan films are for. They're paying tribute to something you cherish, and I think that this fan film does that excellently. I think this documentary showcases that journey very well. I mean, it's amazing, again, like what the end credits mentioned. I think it's just astounding how it lines up. And I just think it's amazing how it lines up in the end with the actual film. Again, it's such a loving, you can see the love and you can see kind of the turmoil and see kind of the danger in every shot, I love that it came back in a Raiders-like way at the end of the day. I love that it kind of was lost to time until he
Exactly.
founding it. How great is that?
Lost to the dust of the DVD shelf.
I mean, seriously, to you, only a few final statements on this before we go summarize the Indiana August, and we'll be out of here. But let me mention this. I think that, again, with this, it's so amazing to get that, again, with Raiders of the Lost Ark, we have this adventure film that's very iconic, permeated the culture. These guys pay tribute to that by doing a documentary on Raiders of by doing a fan film of Raiders of the Lost Ark so painstakingly with all the little details, whether it's good or not, just doing all these little details. Basically, they become obsessed with this for 7 years, and it lies dormant for until 35 years. in total, 35 years later, it comes back in a very Raiders of the Lost Ark way. You become so obsessed with something, it becomes it in a way. I mean, how fascinating is that idea? You became the film you were trying to make.
Right.
And again, like 35 years since Raiders of the Lost, it's like 35 or 36 years since the original Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. That's pretty it's pretty impressive. It reclaimed. It's like amazing to reclaim a film for themselves. They reclaimed the film for themselves, and they earned it though, because again, 35 years in the making, they've earned the right to say, we've also made a Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, Spielberg liked the film and inspired him. What more can you say? That's all you can really say. It's a very impressive.
That's the ultimate. What I really want to know, Dragon, is how does Harrison Ford feel about it? Well, these stupid kids, I don't know, they're doing a waste of time. I'm sorry.
I think I'm more interested to hear what Harrison Ford has to say about that one.
Fair enough.
Anyway, Callista, listen, there's this kid that did a really lousy impression of me. Callista, can you bring me some coffee, please? Anyway, so Callista Flockhart is married to Callista Flockhart. Anyway, so let's just because it's the last one here, let's talk about Indiana August. Just as a whole, like anything you learned from it coming out of it, Tiki?
Well, I mean, I definitely, I think one of the main points for me, at least, Dragon, was to kind of put Indiana Jones in a new light post Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I kind of explained that to you when we were kind of working out the intro.
Yeah.
And I do think we achieved that. I'm not sure if we're kind of like inspiring the masses as a whole to rally behind the character again. But I think for us personally, for the group of friends that we had join us along the journey, you, me, Sandy, Jacob, I definitely think we got a lot out of it. I definitely think, one of the things I really appreciate about Indiana Jones, Dragon, that kind of makes me yearn for a more simple time in cinema, because Indy's such an iconic character, but like you said, he's absolutely someone who's created entirely for the screen. There was no book about him. There was no video game about him. Indy was a creation just for the silver screen. And I gotta say, Dragon, that's kind of one of the big takeaways I have from Indiana August is, as much as we are fans of Marvel and DC and everything like that, and all the, I am yearning for an original hero again, someone to just kind of rise up and really kind of carry the torch that Indy had, because I really don't think we've gotten that since Indiana Jones. I mean, I really don't think we have. Maybe, you're going to hate me for saying this, but maybe Jack Sparrow, to a very, very, very limited extent. I'm not saying Jack Sparrow is as good of a character as Indiana Jones, certainly not. I'm just saying kind of the Pirates of the Caribbean film series was definitely kind of held the mantle of the adventure serial kind of thing. And I am a fan of pirates, but I digress.
Yeah, I'd say it still doesn't count for me because, again, it's kind of based somewhat off Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride.
Yeah, but Jack Sparrow's an original character. Jack Sparrow was never in the ride.
I'm saying, I think we're both looking for Tiki with that. It would be great to see an iconic character come from cinema that's not just an action. I'm not talking about like a John McClane or a Brian Mills. I'm talking about a character who just he represents kind of the beauty, kind of represents kind of the awesomeness of film and cinema. It's a character that compels you. It's not maybe he's an action guy, maybe he's not. Something that appeals to everyone and everything that can last for a long period of time. We want kind of the next Indiana Jones, but again, not just pandering to any single demographic.
Sure. So that's all I have on it. I'm kind of yearning for another character like that. Yeah. And also, Dragon, just really quick, I appreciate how we kind of frame it all kind of in the archaeology kind of perspective. And it's kind of going to make me look at, going to kind of try to explore things that are unearthed, kind of unearth some things. I'm not doing a good job of describing that. But I do like the archaeology thing we had going with this.
Well, thank you. So
I'm sorry. I know I didn't articulate that last point very well.
Let me just say this thing in kind of closing with Indiana August here. Indiana Jones, as a whole, just kind of devoting time to kind of re-explore the characters. We all kind of know Indiana Jones is kind of he's in the consciousness again. He's embroidered on the culture and on the fancy pillow that is culture. He's embroidered on it,
but not the cool side of the pillow.
Maybe the whip extends to the cool side of the pillow. Anyway, point is, Indiana Jones, what it boils down to, and kind of something we've explored in our journey is it's a story of one man going on an adventure to make this to make a discovery that was lost to history. Make discoveries that were lost to history, and he's walking away with experience. He's walking away with the experience of the journey itself. So again, one man going on an adventure to make a discovery that has been lost to history, and he's walking away with the experience that I think we have done. In some respect, we've looked into Indiana Jones the man. We've come away with the experience of kind of getting to know his impact in a more fuller capacity. And the thing I love about Indiana Jones, and again, a little bit of a Batman comparison here, they share the quality of never give up. Indiana Jones has never given up, and I always admire that about the guy. That's why Indiana Jones he deserves a spotlight. That's why we need to devote a month to this guy, or at least thematically a month to this guy.
yeah.
Blame Sandy for that one. We reminded. Anyway, so the whole month it reminded me of why Indiana Jones is crucial to not only Spielberg's career but to cinema as a whole.
All right. So I guess that's it then. Thank you guys for joining us, folks. It's time to seal up the crate, return home, and hang up our hats for the last time on Indiana Jones August. Until our next adventure.
But Tiki, who's going to get the box? Who's going to open that box? What's going on? What do we do?
Top men, Dragon. Top men.